Okay, welcome everyone to the Wednesday, December 10th caucus and work session of the Albany Common Council. Mr. Jimenez, please call the roll. Did I get the date right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Adams? Anane?
I'm okay.
Valloran?
Here.
Clark?
Here.
Conti? Farrell? Flynn? Burke? Hoey?
Here.
Johnson? Keegan?
Here.
Kimbrough?
Here.
Love? Robinson? Zamer?
Here.
8 present. We're also joined by Council President Corey Ellis, City Clerk Shaniqua Jackson, Deputy Corporation Counsel Brett Williams, Research Counsel Robert Wenner, Legislative Director Brian Jimenez, Junior Policy Analyst Alyssa Kamara, Junior Legislative Aide Carly Johnson, and 9th Ward Intern Ariana Costello.
Thank you. All right. So jumping right into the agenda, we'll start the meeting with public hearing for the eminent domain procedure law. Yeah, that's how we're starting. We'll have a hearing on eminent domain to start. Then moving right along for approval of minutes, I'll have the December 1st, 2025 meeting minutes for approval. I'll be offering those. Then next into local laws held. We'll have local law E of 2025 by Mr. Conti. It's local law in relation to requiring a mid-year updated annual financial plan. We'll be voting on that. The next on to ordinances held. Mr. Ballerin's ordinance 168225 to USD ordinance in relation to the nonconformity determination process. We'll be voting on that. That was 168225. I'm looking down, so if anyone wants to jump in, just give me a yell. Then next under ordinances held, also by Mr. Ballerin, ordinance 178225, also USDO ordinance in relation to exceptions for vehicle fueling stations. We'll be voting on that. Then next, Ms. Frederick isn't here right now, but we'll be doing the bonding ordinances. So we're talking ordinance 28-101-25 through ordinance 58-101-25. Ms. Keegan, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that there is, and I'm looking to see if it's on this list, but there was an ordinance that did not get voted out of committee.
From last night with Mr. Yeah.
Correct.
I watched it.
That she may be asking to discharge from committee via majority vote. And I don't know if Councilmember Ballerin wants to jump in and explain the issue, because it's really his issue.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it was the streets and the 11th Ward streets didn't get added again, right?
Yeah, so the 11th Ward has not had many streets on the bonding for the last 3 years. We've had 1 or 0 for the last 3 years consistently. And this year we've been given 0. And I just felt I can't vote for that. So I couldn't support it in committee, and I won't be able to support it. I did not have an opportunity to reach out to engineering. I do hope to do that tomorrow to see if there's any opportunity to add a street in the 11th. The 11th has the highest, 60% highest 1 to 5 ratings, which is considered the poorest ratings for streets. So I'm a little disappointed with engineering not being able to find one block in the ward. I do understand that some of the consideration is that we have some TIP funding that's going to do some work on Central Avenue, but that has been their justification for the last 3 years. to limit the number of streets that have been repaired in the 11th. So I'm hoping that this conversation leads to an opportunity for engineering to revise and take a look at those streets again. Thank you.
Okay, and so I know it was discussed last night in the meeting, who was going to try to reach, because I believe, Ms. Keegan, you said you'd be willing to give up a street in order for him to get a street. So who's reaching out to the, you're going to reach out to the engineering folks to
I'm going to
see
reach out
if
to
it's-
engineering. That's on
Okay.
me. That's on me.
All right.
And I
so
would prefer it not so that anyone has to give anything up, to be honest with you. I would prefer it so that it can be added on, you know, just as an add-on. So, but I appreciate the graciousness from Councilmember Keegan for that suggestion, so I do appreciate that.
Mr. Anand?
And also, you know, in the spirit of, you know, being a good colleague and after the research that I've done and, you know, speaking out for it, I also will be voting no and urge my colleagues to do the same.
Thank you. Mr. Hope, and actually, Ms. Keegan, did you want to say anything?
No, I mean, the 9th Ward got 3 streets. We also are graded fairly poorly. I mean, I think almost 55% of our roadways are rated 1 through 5 as well. And I don't necessarily disagree with the selection of streets. I mean, 2 of the 3 have been on my list, and 1 of the 3, we certainly had really significant degradation there last winter, and it was relatively impassable before the pothole crew came and basically filled potholes all the way from Hackett Boulevard to New Scotland Avenue. But if it becomes a matter of we don't have the borrowing capacity to add streets for the 11th Ward, I would be happy to revisit that conversation on the streets that were selected to make it work for the 11th Ward to be able to get some of its paving priorities done.
Thank you. Mr. Holy?
Yeah, I haven't even had a chance to look at the streets, because I know there were, I mean, one of my comments is, why do we always have to wait last minute to get the street list? I mean, I met with the mayor back in October, or late September. And the other thing is, I definitely would feel that I wouldn't stand in solidarity with my fellow council member. It's just not right. And there's a pattern here. If he's saying for the last 3 years this has happened, I mean, is he being targeted by the administration or somebody? I don't know. And it just, that, to me, that's a bad pattern 3 times in a row. I mean, 3 strikes, you're out as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Right. I think there's a deeper conversation that needs to be had, because if you recall, the way they schedule the work is based on what NIMO has going on or any of the utilities having going on, because they don't want to dig, you know, repair the street, make a beautiful street, and then have NIMO have to dig it all up. So that, not making excuses for them, but that's,
No, I know.
there's
But
some
can I
other
jump in real
considerations.
fast? Because when you
There's some
said
other
that,
considerations.
my blood pressure just went up. Do you know how many of my streets that have been dug up this last year that we just had paved last year? I mean, it's ridiculous what's going on. I can tell you Pleasant View, they dug it up. I mean, I can go all over my ward and show you the streets that were done, and NIMO comes in and digs them up, you know, and it's like, well, they had to, or the water department has to come in, which I can kind of understand, but when they don't leave it as nice as when it was done, because once you dig in, you cannot get it back to how it was originally done, and it takes years to get these streets done. So, yeah, I just had to get that out off my chest. I'm sorry.
Okay, Tom. Thank you. No, good point. Ms. Farrell. Sir.
Thank you, and apologies for not being there last night. I was away on work and didn't get back until late, so I've not yet had the opportunity to watch the video. But I'm also happy to work through things. I know for my ward, I didn't, for many years in a row, I didn't have something in the bonding, but what they would do is often, like, the DGS themselves would, or not DGS, but engineering themselves, I guess depending on the year, DGS or engineering, you know. But they would come in, so it wasn't on the official list, but we would get some roads done afterwards, especially with larger projects up in the air. So I didn't have anything for a couple of years because I had some big projects going on, and they were still able to get like at least portions of streets. So I know that I certainly want to make sure that the entire city is getting, like, the roads are difficult everywhere, and if we're not being vigilant and equitable in every ward, then we're going to end up in situations where one ward is dramatically worse than the other. And obviously the wear and tear matters, and the 11th ward gets some of the most wear and tear because you've got Central Avenue going through there, like you're a big, there's a lot of people that use your streets. But it's also something that it would be good to know before we reach out if there has been anything done that wasn't necessarily on the bonding list, but then you still had work done, because I know that that would be, when we reach out to engineering, that would be my immediate reply, like, no, it wasn't in bonding, but we were able to do this, this, and this in-house. So that's the other thing that we should always keep in mind, because if those in-house if you're not getting anything in-house either, then that's unacceptable. But if you're getting in-house work done, that could also be the way they're looking at it, that it's something where it's like, all right, we want to reserve the bonding for this, but we know in-house we're going to take care of these pieces. So just to flag that. But I'm also really happy to advocate and make sure that your ward is getting taken care of.
Okay. And I think that ordinance is 52. Does that make sense? That sound about right? The streets and sidewalk resurfacing?
It's 43.
43?
I don't think it's on our list.
Yeah, it was taken off
it's
the
not
active
on the
list
active
because of the
agenda.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that anyone who missed the finance meeting was aware that there may be a request to discharge that legislation via majority consent, and to be able to process through the issues that came up that caused it not to move from committee while we were in caucus. It just made sense for us to talk about that now. That's all.
Okay. All right. So next.
Sorry, Kelly.
Oh, you want to?
No, I just want to say, and not to beat a dead horse, but even their own report from engineering is saying that the 11th ward is actually one of the worst poorly paved. This is engineering. They came up with this report, and we passed our equity agenda a couple of years ago, and this is a majority minority district, and to see this happening, it's like, come on. So I hope my colleagues would stand in solidarity.
Okay. I will stand in solidarity. Okay. All right. Okay. So next ordinance after that is by Mr. Ballerin. It's USD ordinance 61-111-25. It's the one in relation to parking lots in MU-FM zoning districts. We'll be voting on that. For any of these ordinances, Mr. Ballerin, if you want to jump in and say anything, just let me know. So. They all passed the committee. Okay. Good. And so that was it for ordinances. Now we're moving on to resolutions introduced. We got resolution 142, 122, 25R by Mr. Clark in relation to the eminent domain procedure law regarding the proposed acquisition of real property for the construction of the solid waste facility. That'll be a referral to general services? Or is it something that we need to
Well, given that,
move?
is there a general services meeting scheduled between now and Monday? I guess.
I would say not.
So in that case, yeah, I mean, I would be asking for it to be acted upon, because if it's not acted on Monday, then it,
All right,
disappears and would have to be reintroduced in the new year.
okay. And so if members have questions about it, I would suggest you reach out to Mr. Williams for any questions with that, but the intention is to pass it on Monday. Did anyone have any questions about it right now? Oh, Mr. Holy?
I thought we were going to do a public hearing. I didn't know we were pushing this by the end of the year to get this
Well,
to go through.
Just want to clarify any confusion in the first place. So the one we're requesting for addition by MC, is that the one we were discussing just now, Councilmember Kimbrough?
No, this is 142. We are not to the MC yet.
Got it, yes. Yeah, I mean, the request would be to vote on it on Monday, again, because when this council has its last meeting on Monday, then the legislation would need to be reintroduced in the new year. We would probably potentially have to schedule another public hearing.
Why
So what
not?
are we voting
Can you
on?
explain what it does?
What's this about? This,
So the resolution 121,
it's 142, 122, 25.
yes,
This is 142.
142.
142.
Yeah, sorry, bear with me 1 second. Too many papers. Yeah. So a taking under eminent domain is effectuated by what's called a determination and findings. That is when the public body that has the authority to use the eminent domain power has taken a look at the proposed use of eminent domain, made sure that the proposed use satisfies all the requirements of the eminent domain procedure law. So, for example, that it serves a public use, and all of these things are laid out here in the resolution. And then, in order to issue that determination and findings, which would allow the city to acquire the property by eminent domain, the council would need to pass a resolution making that determination and findings. This resolution also effectuates some of the requirements under SECRA as well to make the Common Council's determination that there are no adverse environmental impacts associated with this use of eminent domain. So.
Brett, will this come back to the council? And again, I'm confused. We kind of held up the public hearing because a lot of us felt uncomfortable. But when we did talk to Robert McGee in executive session, I felt a little bit better. But I'm still hoping that the owners will turn around and sell it to the city before we got to go through. Can you just go through real fast? We do a public hearing. What is, this law just says, lays out what the regulation is to do?
This resolution would authorize the city to use eminent domain to acquire the property. It does not mean that we have to do that or that we will necessarily do that. It certainly leaves open the prospect and the possibility that we can come to a negotiated arrangement with the property owners. So this, this is a requirement of the eminent domain procedure law. If the city is going to use eminent domain, it has to pass this resolution to make its determination and findings. But again, it doesn't, once the city, through the council, has made that determination and findings, that does not necessarily mean that the city has to or will use eminent domain. It's just
Does the council have a chance to, is this it with us, though? That's my question.
I believe this would be the council's last involvement, yeah.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
you will have, by the time you vote on this, you will have heard the various sides or anybody who wants to speak in the public hearing as well, so.
Yeah, but that's, it's a de facto. So once we vote this, the council's no longer involved. in the eminent domain.
Correct.
Okay.
Right, and this isn't, I mean, if you read the supporting legislation, it just,
And I didn't read it.
it's just saying that the resolution also expresses the council's determination that the proposed use of eminent domain will not have a negative environmental impact pursuant to seeker. So that's our part in this, that's what this is.
Okay.
It's not the act of taking, it's not, it moves the process along, but it's not, go ahead.
I guess my biggest concern is that we have not had an opportunity to interact and ask questions to the owners or the owners' lawyers. I mean, have we reached out and invited them to a meeting to actually have a back and forth conversation versus just a public comment where they come, they say their piece and leave?
Well,
Or we can actually ask them, do they live in these buildings? Do they get staff for these buildings? Is this something that they see as their primary home or as their secondary home? You know, what is the, what is their long-term goal? You know, because, look, somebody owns a property for 50 years. You know, there's more value in that than just the land. So, I mean, that's why, that's my biggest, I'll be honest, that's my biggest hesitation with this.
the council will have that opportunity on Monday. That's what the public hearing is. We have
Did we
to,
invite them?
what, I'm sorry?
Did we call the lawyer and say, come in here and talk to the council?
We have to notify
No.
the property owners by law. We have to notify them of the public hearing, and we have done so.
But did you invite them to speak to us?
Yeah, well, during the public hearing, they've been invited. They are welcome to sit in the chair, speak to you, and as you know, in public hearings, the council can ask questions
Yeah.
of people speaking at public hearings as opposed to public comment, where the council does not ask questions of people. So the public hearing on Monday will be an opportunity for the council to do exactly what you're concerned about.
Right, since this all kind of came to a head, their attorneys have been here twice, and so, to your point with the question and answer, the public hearing will be at the beginning of our next meeting will be our opportunity to have a back and forth with the owner or their representative to ask these questions.
Correct.
Ms. Zamer?
Thank you, and my recollection is that we have discussed this. I'm not sure, Councilmember Ballard, if you were present for the executive session that we discussed this at length, and not that I wanted to talk about anything like that, but we did speak publicly about the fact that they have been negotiating to sell it. Like they certainly are looking to offload it. And that, I think, seemed pretty clear, unless I'm wrong. And it was a matter of the price that they were asking.
So my concern is that we haven't been able to talk and have an interactive conversation with their lawyers, with their side. So I'm a true believer of getting both sides in the room and be able to both sides be able to go back and forth and say, well, this is what we're saying, but then this is what we're saying.
Weren't we relayed that information about what the owner's attorneys and what the owners were saying and negotiating?
I mean, I believe the council has been.
What was the question again?
That I thought that we were briefed on both sides on more than one occasion. That's all. And I'm just wondering if Councilmember Ballard, if maybe missed that or something. But I thought that was pretty clear. Okay.
What I'm saying is we were briefed by one side. So one side briefed us, and we had the opportunity to go back and forth and have a good back and forth with Corporation Counsel. We did not have that opportunity to go back and forth with their counsel. So that's what I'm saying. I would have preferred.
Okay. My last point is that this resolution is not stating that the council agrees, or the council is. We're authorizing the city to negotiate a potential eminent domain. We're not voting for the eminent domain itself. Is that correct?
You are authorizing the city to, the city to take the property by eminent domain, but you're not saying that the city has to do so or that the city necessarily will do so.
Okay.
And I would just remind the council as well that even if the city does ultimately use that power of eminent domain, we still have to pay the property owners the fair market value of their property. So it's not as if we're just taking the property and giving them nothing in return. They would still receive the fair market value of their property if eminent domain is ultimately used.
Ms. Farrell?
And just to note that what we're voting on is the secret review. It's the environmental impact review and who would be the lead agency. So it's not even about eminent domain. It's about...
That's not quite the case.
Okay.
This resolution it accomplishes two things. It does
do the...
It makes the council's secret findings, yes, but it also
enables us to do...
enables the
Okay.
city to...
Apologies that I did not fully read through this. I was going through that. But I will say, to Councilmember Zamer's point, we have heard a lot of the information on both sides. The hearing is an opportunity to hear more information from that. But it's also not, it is not necessarily the council's role to negotiate on both sides. It is actually Corporation Council's role, and they have been doing that for 2 years. So there's been a lot of back and forth that's happened with the city and with this party. The party signed a document saying that they would give the city the right of first refusal to this. So clearly the people want to sell the property. They want to get the best price that they can. I don't blame anyone for that. We all want, if we're selling something, to get the best possible price that you can. They are using every tactic that they can to do that, and they are in every right to do that. It is our job as a council to make sure that we are being fiscally responsible when it comes to taxpayer dollars, and that we are not overpaying for a property because somebody is inflating the value in order to get the best possible price that they can. So my concern with this, because there is, with very good reason, because historically eminent domain was abused by the government, 100%. We look back in the 1800s, and it is unconscionable what the government did with eminent domain. Because of that, and yeah, in the 1960s even, like even in our city, like what happened with the Empire State Plaza, there was a lot of people, was not okay. There have been a lot of laws that have been passed since then that make sure that the people, if eminent domain is used, it is done in a fair way. And I will be the first one, if this is not done in a fair way, I will be right with everybody else standing against this. But the fact of the matter is, I believe the city has behaved in a very transparent, very responsible manner when it comes to this property. And what my concern is, because of the reaction of the words of eminent domain, we are actually enabling the city to overpay for a property that we shouldn't be overpaying for, that the people who own the property want to sell and want to get a good price. The city wants to pay a good price. They want a lot more. So my concern is that because we don't like the words eminent domain, we're now going to be bending over backwards so that we're going to be allowing taxpayer dollars to be overspent in a situation that we shouldn't be overspent because we feel badly about the words eminent domain. And that's what I want to make sure we're not doing. So I'm thrilled that we're having somebody come in, but I think we all have to be very careful that we're not putting our residents and our taxpayers in a bad position because we don't like the words eminent domain.
Robert Winter.
Just to the extent that you're able to in a public meeting, could you elaborate a little on what the process looks like between the potential passage of this resolution and the effectuation of any taking, especially just any subsequent approvals and, who holds decision-making authority from that point?
Yeah, there aren't really any further approvals necessarily. So at that point, it would probably be a decision of the administration whether to proceed with using eminent domain. Obviously, at this point, we and the outside counsel that we're working with are still attempting to negotiate and maintain dialogue with the property owners and their attorneys. So, if for whatever reason it appears that those conversations really are going nowhere, or that they're just not willing to continue negotiations, then at that point the administration could then exercise the authority to obtain the property by eminent domain.
And generally speaking, do you have an idea as to what that timeline could look like? Should members expect a lengthier process to continue from there, months more of negotiations, or is this something that gets passed Monday and could take effect on Tuesday?
I mean, in theory, it could take effect on Tuesday, but I don't believe that's the intention. I think the city would prefer to arrive at a negotiated settlement, but one that gets near fair market value for the properties. So, I can't say for sure how long that would take, but I don't anticipate it. It's not like it would be happening on Tuesday, for example.
Mr. Hoadley?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not worried about the words eminent domain. That's not what's bothering me. What's bothering me tremendously is that we're going to push this through because it's the end of the year. And we got a brand new council coming in, and it's not going to go to committee. The other thing I'm kind of concerned about is we heard that the owners are snowbirds. And if I'm a snowbird, I'm not going to be up north right now. I'll be down in Florida or South Carolina, wherever they live. So now we're depending on their attorney. And I also heard during the, that they got a brand new attorney. So it's like, to me, it's the perfect storm that we're pushing this. I'm not saying don't do eminent domain, but the timeline here is a lot different than what Robert McGee told us when we had the executive session. He said, let's just get this, let's do the public hearing, and that's going to kind of push people. But we're doing the same day we're doing the public hearing, we want to pass legislation. I don't have any problem with the seeker doing the MC on that, because I trust our counsel for that. But I do have a problem that we're not going to, discuss this in committee and give the owners a chance to come in or have good representation. Again, it's all about due process, and that's what's important.
Tom, that's not true. This is exactly the timeline that Rob McGee talked about. The reason why it's pushed up against is because we didn't pass it when we should have. So this is our own making. This is exactly the timeline that Rob explained to us. This is on the timeline that the family knew about when they signed the documents, it's my understanding. This timeline has been the same because we know what we have to do because the dump is closing. So it's not as if this is an arbitrary thing. There's been a very clear timeline that Rob went through with us, and we are still on the same timeline. It is not different. It's pushed back because of our actions.
And again, I missed the first exec session, so I didn't understand that. Second timeline, he didn't explain that. Not that I remember anyhow. But.
Right, and what I will say about this also is I think we're talking about the eminent domain. I think some members have this impression that we're taking something from them that they don't want to give up. They want to sell it. They just want to sell it for the price that they want to sell it for. So there's a difference.
And Mr. Clark has had his hand up for a bit. You can't always see him.
So, I mean, my understanding is that the city would have up to 3 years to actually effectuate the taking. It's not something that would have to be immediate. Also, not that I would encourage the property owners, but there are protections under the statute that if they disagree with the determination and findings and price, they have an ability to challenge that in a court of competent jurisdiction. So it's not like this is end-all, be-all, and if they are going to challenge it because they have attorneys, let's get it started, because we do have a landfill that's closing, and we should get through that process if we need to.
And I should say as well that the property owners sort of have two opportunities to do so. They have an opportunity to challenge the determination and findings itself, and then they have a separate opportunity through a different proceeding under the EDPL to challenge the fair market value of the property. So just even looking at that litigation timeline, I think, as Councilmember Clark pointed out, it probably behooves the council and the city to act sooner rather than later on this.
Yeah, that's why I would say not delay it, because then you're just providing further potential delay.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Mr. Ballerin?
So I just want to make 2 points. One, I'm not taking blame for this delay, and I don't think the council should take blame for this delay. This was put on us 90 days before the end of the year. If this, as I think anyone who knows that we are closing our landfill by 2028, this should have been put on our agenda 6, 7, 8 months ago for us to be able to have a more in-depth conversation, and so that some of the concerns that members have could have been put to ease. I think it's important for residents to know that, yes, members have concerns with the idea of government taking property from owners. That does not mean that we want the city not to get a fair deal, but we do want to make sure that there's some type of a due process where we hear from both sides. That's all I'm asking for. All I'm asking for is to be able to hear, have back and forth conversations, ask tough questions to both sides, have both sides in the same room having those tough conversations with each other, versus only having one side have that opportunity and the other side have 5 minutes of public comment, which is all we've had from the other side. So I get it. We need to get this done, and I'm not against getting it done. I'm just against getting it done without having having had the opportunity to ask questions to both sides. And hopefully that will happen on Monday. But it has not happened at this point. We have not had an opportunity to ask any questions to their lawyers. We have not had any opportunity to ask any intense questions about, is this just a property as an empty, vacant property? Because that's a huge difference. This is just an empty, vacant property versus a property that people see as their home that they go back to every summer. So, you know, that's my reasoning why I have concerns with moving on this so quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Farrell, then we'll close this out.
Yeah, just a reminder that 6 or 7 months ago, the city was actually trying to negotiate and not go to eminent domain. So it was not possible. The only reason we had to go to eminent domain is because after 2 years, the family did not get an assessment, which takes a couple weeks. Like, I could get an assessment done on pretty much any property in maximum 2 weeks. It's not hard to do. No. The family didn't do that for 2 years. The city did do that. They got an outside assessment. The city then took that price, doubled it, and made an offer, and the family rejected it, and then gave a counter offer that was 5 times the assessment price with no proof to it. And then the family fired their lawyer and hired a new one. So let's just keep in mind the process here, that this is not something that it's not a shock, it's not a surprise. The family knew about it the whole time. They signed first refusal documents. They are ready to sell. They want to. We appreciate it. I will say, when the attorneys have come in, I appreciate what the family has done over the years, and I want them to get a good price for it. I don't have an issue with that. I think that that is the responsible thing to do, and I think that we're also fortunate that this is happening. Let's also keep in mind that because of where this property is, specifically in the Pine Bush, there's a lot of limits to it. They cannot sell it as a commercial property. It is not possible to be that. They don't have a lot of options in terms of sales. Again, I don't blame them for trying to get the best price possible, but I do have an issue with us continuing to bend over backwards when people are not, I don't believe they're acting in good faith. I believe that they are acting to get the best possible dollar, and they're using every tactic they can. And again, I don't blame them, but I do blame us if we fall for it.
That's right. I concur with everything Ms. Farrell said. Council members, this is a negotiation, and you're falling for this trap. The lawyer came in front of us. Their lawyer came in front of us and said, well, we haven't had time to get an assessment. What do you mean you didn't have time to get an assessment? How's that possible? Please, people, eye on the ball. This is a negotiation. Do not fall for this eminent domain language. We have to have every thing at our disposal to negotiate what's the best interest for the city. And if eminent domain, if we have that in our pocket, we will use it if need be. But we have to make sure we're doing the best interest for the city of Albany. They want to sell. We just make sure that the city, the resident city of Albany, and the city does not pay for what it's not worth. And I think the council, going back and forth, worried about eminent domain and all that, I really think we have to keep our eye on the ball, as what Ms. Farrell said, and that we need to act on this. And I think if their attorneys needed to get in touch with us, they would have done what other attorneys have done, sent us emails. Oh, I would like to talk to you. They didn't do that. So I think the council should act on this, and let's move forward.
Thank you. Okay, so this, again, we're having that public hearing on Monday. You'll get a chance to ask questions. Okay, so moving on, next resolution is Ms. Keegan's 143, 122, 25. It's the resolution support, council supporting Universal Human Rights Month and Human Rights Day. We're all co-sponsors on that. So, yeah, we'll be moving forward with that. Then moving right along, we'll be adding an item by majority consent. It's by Mr. Clark, Resolution 144, 122, 25R. It's on your desk. It's a resolution of the council declaring itself, declaring its intent to act as a lead agency for seeker. 144, 122, 25R. It's our intention to do the introduction and pass that at the meeting on Monday.
Yep, that would be the request. And I just want to clarify with that. That is associated with the Wrap Road transfer station. It's not directly associated with the eminent domain in any way. It's just starting the seeker review for the Wrap Road transfer station, the construction of that project.
Can I just ask real quick, that also needs to be taken out of order, right?
Say that again, sir?
Would that need to be taken out of order?
No, that one wouldn't need to be.
Okay, so that's that. And then we have two MCs forthcoming, one by Ms. Zamer for, do you want to explain yours? It's the MC for the student that's in detention.
We're still working on that, but
Okay.
yes, it has to do with the targeting of our Afghan community here, and which he was not a member of the Afghan community, but he was a graduate of Albany High who has been in detention for the last 5 months. So we're trying to craft a resolution, bring some attention to our residents who have been basically disappeared.
Okay, thank you. So you'll be receiving that via email. And then also Ms. Love has an MC also that you'll be putting out.
Correct.
Okay, so you guys look out for those in your emails. And with that, that's it
Kelly, I got a
for the
fast
agenda. Mr. Hoey.
Yeah, Jack's resolution 140, 121, 25, it passed general services. Are we going to be able to pass it this year, or, because it's not?
He didn't, he actually messaged me earlier saying that he wanted to hold off.
The family who are honoring is not able to be here Monday, so we are looking to move that to a future meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
So that
Jack
means we
actually-
have to go through the whole process again, though, right?
Yeah,
Oh, do
if
we?
we go out of this, yeah, we would just have to reintroduce it, but
All right. We can talk to him and
Yeah.
see what he wants to do.
But yeah, Jack asked me to hold it, so.
Sure.
Someone else have something? Because if not, we'll adjourn this meeting so we can get into the planning meeting. Did you have something, Ms. Zamer? Okay. All right, so caucus is adjourned, so. We'll turn it over to you, Mr. Ballerin.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So, yeah, we're pretty much on schedule. Time is 6:19, and we're going to start our Planning, Economic Development, and Land Use Committee meeting. Today, we have a hefty agenda, I would say. We're going to talk about inclusionary zoning. We have two bills on the agenda that are trying to address this issue in one way or another. But we're really going to just have a much broader conversation as we discuss the two bills in hand. So, with that said, can we do a quick roll call of committee members, please?
Adams, Ballerin,
Here.
Clark,
Here.
Hoey,
Here.
Zamer.
Here.
For present, one absent. We're also joined by City Clerks Shaniqua Jackson, Deputy Corporation Counsel Brett Williams, Research Counsel Robert Wenner, Legislative Director Brian Jimenez, Junior Policy Analyst Alyssa Camara, Junior Legislative Aide Carly Johnson, and it seems that we're also joined by City Treasurer Darius Shansfar and members from the Mayor's Office.
Okay, so do we have people sign up for public comment? How many?
We currently have 6 people signed up for public comment.
Okay, so since we have 6 people signed up for public comment, does anyone else want to sign up at this time? I want to give everybody an opportunity.
Are we also going to note the other council members who are present?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Did we not acknowledge the other council members?
Apologies. We're also present is Council President Corey Ellis, Council Member Kelly Kimbrough, Council Member Anane. Brian, can you please?
Council members Keegan, Zamer, or well, Keegan Farrell, yep, and I think that, and Anane. I believe that was, we hit everybody, right? Yeah.
Okay, so just want to give anyone who has not signed up, would like the opportunity to sign up for public comment, please raise your hands now so we can get you in there. Okay, if not, since we have 6 people signed up, I'm going to limit public comment to 4 minutes a person so we can get through public comment as quickly as possible and then get to the discussion by members. I'm also going to ask people, representatives from Housing for All, as well as from, I think we have someone from Capitalize Albany here, to also join us in the discussion. So, if you could start calling public comment.
Alicia Bacon.
Hello, my name is Elisha Bacon. I live in the city of Albany. I'm here to ask that the council vote no on ordinances 63121.25 and 24.101.25. Both measures weaken our inclusionary zoning law at a time when Albany residents are struggling to find safe, truly affordable housing. I believe we need to strengthen affordability requirements, not create new outs for developers. That's my comment.
Thank you. Next on the list.
Andy Kerr.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name's Andy Kyer. I live on 97 Chestnut Street in the 6th Ward. I'm a PhD student at the University of Albany. I'm in the sociology department, and I research the housing crisis. Yeah, well, I mean, I just want to say we're obviously coming to the end of the year. You all are coming to the end of your terms. I feel like you have a pretty fantastic track record of, this session, particularly around public input responsiveness. I think you've been up against a lot of difficult legislation, difficult constituencies, you name it, whether it's the cabaret law, inclusionary zoning, veto overrides, budget debates, even including standing up to the mayor when necessary. So obviously we're talking tonight is a major piece of legislation. And obviously we got a lot of folks in the room who are, I suspect this is a pretty heavily attended zoning committee meeting based on standards. And so, yeah, I'm just really concerned. I echo Alicia's points of standing in opposition to these resolutions. I think the idea of rushing through a major policy change in the 11th hour as I know this isn't an offensive term, but it's a lame duck council and a lame duck administration. The people of Albany spoke, and we voted in a lot of new leaders, including Dorsey Aplears, who's going to be our next mayor. And I really don't think it's appropriate that we would take this lame duck term and try to force through, between holidays when a lot of people, a lot of advocates, a lot of tenants are just trying to enjoy the time with their families. I'm really glad that a lot of people came out tonight to speak out on this, but we're missing a lot of voices here. And so for this major of a policy change, I think it's really important that we be transparent and we have a lot of public dialogue and discourse. Especially the other thing I wanted to say too is obviously we just got a ton of new data. Like I'm a data person, I'm a grad student. I'm really excited to dig into the housing audit. Obviously just came out, there's a lot there. I've taken an initial look, super interested on that, and I think this should be a community conversation, and I'm just really worried that if we try to force something through by the end of the year, it's not going to be a community conversation. And I just want to say, obviously, it's no secret that there is sort of a driving force behind these conversations. I think we should name that. It's no secret that the mayor of Albany, the current Mayor Sheehan, really wants this rollback to go through. She always has. But this shouldn't be her decision. This should be the decision of the council, and more importantly, this should be the decision of the community. And it should really center tenant voices and voices that are, struggling with the housing affordability crisis. So I want to really strongly encourage you to table this legislation to the new year, allow the new council members to be sworn in, allow the new mayor to be sworn in, and not to rush through a major policy change without meaningful discourse, community debate, and discussion. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Canyon Ryan.
Hello. Good to see you all. Canyon Ryan, 25 North Pine Ave, Executive Director of United Tenants of Albany. Good to see you all again to talk about the same subject, inclusionary zoning. It has been a perennial subject because of the animosity that it received after overriding 2 vetoes, which we're really proud of this council for doing because that takes a lot of work and a lot of struggle, and it was a pretty monumental moment. And it resulted in a lot of problems for progress on housing moving forward. When you all passed good cause eviction, it had to expire into effect, and we saw really detrimental impacts of that at Danker Village, where tenants were receiving $600 rent increases per month. And then when you all, in the beginning of this year, tried to make it easier for new development by modifying, I think, parking requirements, that was also vetoed on the basis of inclusionary zoning. None of this is directly related other than the fact that it has to do with housing. But I just think that the historic analysis here is that inclusionary zoning has been this wedge that has been driven between the council and the administration. And I felt really thankful for the council and how it stood behind inclusionary zoning. And I'm quite disappointed that now in December, with 20-something days left in the calendar year, we're trying to rush through changes to a bill that took many years to come together. And so I don't know, I think it's important to kind of add that historic aspect to it, because there has not been a lot of cooperation on housing since passing inclusionary zoning, but suddenly there has been a lot of cooperation on taking away, what is low-income tenants' only opportunity at new quality, affordable housing. The amendments in the Ballerin et al. Proposal are pretty important. It increases the area median income by 10%. I think that that's significant. If you increase it to 80% in the context of a compromise, I would qualify for inclusionary zoning. My salary is $65,000 per year. That is more than the average median household in the city of Albany. So it may prioritize some younger, wealthier-ish households like mine, but it does not include the vast majority of tenants that need this affordable housing. Also found in the Ballerin amendment is so right now, when we passed inclusionary zoning, there was no part of that legislation that necessitated that the affordable units go to households with that area median income. This bill actually addresses that, which is something that we've been talking about, but really had no way to bring up without it becoming a contentious issue because it related to inclusionary zoning. So I think that that's really important too, because we didn't have a mechanism to ensure that the people who are supposed to be benefiting from this policy actually were, and that's something that's been addressed. When you think of $5,000 to $10,000 or $10,000 to $15,000 to be completely exempt from inclusionary zoning, it's really nothing. And I think developers are coming into the city with $1 million proposals, and they, I'm sure, are just kind of giggling at this conversation about, oh, $5,000 per unit, that's nothing. I can pay that with my Christmas bonus. And effectively what this policy has been is a Christmas bonus for developers at the expense of low-income tenants who are the majority of the city of Albany. And I agree that this conversation has been very rushed. It was not rushed by the council. It was not rushed by advocates. It was rushed by the mayor's administration, and we, in a rush, responded to it, and we responded through dialogue, both with housing advocates, with tenants, with developers, with other common council members, and it was in dialogue with the proposal, the Clark Amendment to the inclusionary zoning repeal. It took what the Clark repeal offered, modified it, and brought something back to the table. If there's no consensus that can be found on that basis of the new Ballerin et al. Proposal, then I think that we should table this entire conversation until the new year, because as Andy said, there are a lot of people that have little accountability right now, and that's fine. It's kind of the perfect time to rush through a change, but I don't think that this is the democracy that Council President Corey Ellis spoke about on November 17th. We talked about this is a new democratic era for Albany, and this is essentially the opposite of that new democratic era. So I think it would be a mistake to move forward either of these, but if you had to pick one, I would suggest the one that was concocted through dialogue and discussion with the people who are directly impacted, and not with developers who, yes, are directly impacted financially, but they don't benefit from this essential protection that you all fought so hard to pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Maria Markovics.
Chair is beginning to feel like home. Maria Markovics, 38 Myrtle Ave. Housing for All really believes that we did not give the 2023 inclusionary housing policies a chance. But we do have an absolute bottom line, and that is what's spelled out in the Ballerin Amendment or ordinance. First of all, the 5% affordable set-aside is not negotiable. One of the main purposes of inclusionary housing is to provide affordable housing in an economically integrated setting. You have people who can afford to pay $3,000 a month, and people who can afford to pay $1,200 a month in the same building. Not having the warehouse district downtown with the higher rents and the lower rent subsidized housing in the South End or in Arbor Hill. So that is one of the major advantages of inclusionary housing, is that it's integrated economically. Dorcia Pleers, our new mayor, fought very hard to have the 5% set aside in the 2017 amendment. She had to fight with the mayor, Sheehan, who did not want to see the 5%. Now, 8 years later, the mayor says, oh, those were the great days when it was 5%, and now it's the 2023 things that are destroying Albany. That's ridiculous. The other thing is equity. I mean, developers get hundreds of thousands of dollars in pilots. So, again, the bottom line, approaching equity, is the $25,000 in lieu fee. Not the $5,000, not the $10,000, not the $15,000. Those are jokes. It's the bottom line is $25,000. To me, it's ironic. I read Capitalize Albany's 2025 annual report, and it gave a glowing picture of what's going on in downtown Albany. And then I see Jeff Buell, he's on the South End Collaborative, saying he can live with inclusionary zoning, and he's putting up 87 units in downtown. So, what's going on here? So anyway, we encourage you to, we would like you to keep the 2023 requirements in place. Again, they didn't have a chance. But again, the bottom line is what's spelled out in the Ballerin ordinance. Thank you.
Eduardo Hernandez.
Hello, everybody. Here again, talking about the inclusionary zoning. And I want to echo what Andy and Canyon had mentioned already, and Maria mentioned this as well. That we have a situation where something was voted in by the council, and it was voted in because, again, to echo the words of council members who brought this up, voted in because it was the right thing to do, and it was difficult to get to that place, and there was a lot of discussion and a lot of pushback by the mayor, but it was voted in. And I agree, I don't know that this has been given the chance to actually work. And there is a lot of sentiment amongst constituents on the timing of what is going on. Why this has been pushed so fervently by the mayor in her final 100 days, why this came up so quickly on November 17th and was passed, and we had a proposal on that day that really just stripped the inclusionary zoning and kept it in name only and removed all the benefits to lower income and working class people to benefit developers. But we're in a situation, I agree, that we should hold back and not move forward with any change at this point. It doesn't strike the people of Albany who would benefit from inclusionary zoning, as something that's in their benefit. And there are a lot of questions on why this is being brought up at this point. So, yeah, and again, when you look at this, I know that there's been a lot, especially from the mayor, that this is precluding development in the city. But when you look at it, there are plenty of places that have inclusionary zoning. Massachusetts does statewide. We see the city of Baltimore, Maryland has inclusionary zoning and has benefited from that, and certain parts of New York City. You know, and I truly believe that Albany, in the situation that we are in, especially with coming across with the money for development from the state, that we have the ability to really do something incredible here and really benefit the people of this community. But I don't think that's going to happen if we rush through and change what we have here and just hope that it works. So yeah, I'm hoping that you all table this and we have more discussions and we move forward with something that will really benefit working class people in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Tim Sequist.
My name is Tim Segrist, and I live at 806 New Scotland Avenue. First, I commend this body for passing the Inclusionary Housing Bill in 2023. For many reasons, not your altruism, not your sense of justice, the bill unintentionally left growth to stagnate in Albany. Now, you're in that murky process of compromise. You want to help the 50% of Albany citizenry who are at some degree of being financially incapable of keeping up. One reason being the housing market that we have. Anyway, I recommend that 75% of the penalty charge that supposedly comes from the developer, that go to repairing rental buildings that are deemed hazards in our neighborhoods, you know, the X-houses. That 75% would then be a seed to spawn other discretionary monies that our new mayor could find. It's a Band-Aid, but it's a start. We so need a healing. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
There are no more public comments signed up.
Okay, thank you. I know we have the mayor's office in Capitalized Albany. I think they just walked out. Okay. They're coming back? Okay. So I was going to give them an opportunity to speak, and then I was going to also ask, so David, yeah, I'd like to give you and your team an opportunity to speak. And then after your team speaks, I'm going to ask if you join us in these empty seats that we have, and as well as if some representatives from Housing for All could also join us as we have this discussion and this open back and forth. Well, did you want to do a presentation and then have? I'd say let's have your presentation. So and then we can all sit and have a conversation. Maria, do you want to come up, and anyone else from Housing for More? If you want to come up and take some of these seats as well, so we can have. Okay, Sergio will be joining us. I didn't know he's on his way.
I'll go to Joe.
Okay, you can hang out over here too. We're not that. Okay, so we're going to get started. David, you've got a presentation. If you can highlight some of your points here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ballerin. And for the record, we will send this digitally. We just finalized this right before we came up, so you will have a digital copy as well. And I apologize you didn't have it before. Yeah, I mean, it's a public document. Yeah. So I think, I think we've talked about inclusionary, well, I shouldn't say I think. I know we've talked about inclusionary for literally years, since at least 2016, 17. And I think that everyone in this room, I feel confident in saying that everyone in this room agrees on some very basic principles, that we all want there to be housing at every income level, that we all want there to be mixed income neighborhoods, and that we don't want to concentrate poverty, particularly in our historically underserved neighborhoods. And I just want to say that out loud because I feel like that gets lost in this conversation of one side, the perception of one side versus the other. I think that there is a lot of common ground on this issue, and we need to remember that as we're having this conversation. That being said, the slides in front of the council members, and we'll go through them pretty quickly because some of these, if you've already read the audit, you've read this, and I don't want to belabor the evening, but I think it's really important to highlight. Did you have a question, Alfredo? Oh yeah, I have more, sorry. Sorry, Callie, I didn't mean to skip you. For the first two slides, it really is highlighting what you've already seen before from Capitalize Albany, which is over the last 12 years, we have been building housing at every income level between 2014 and 2023. We were building multifamily projects in downtown, midtown, and uptown. We're building affordable housing as well. That's slide 2 really shows you the private affordable housing pipeline. So these projects are happening. Affordable housing has always been being built, and market rate housing was being built pre-2023. Slides 3 and 4 are from the audit that the Chief City Auditor released the other day. And again, I think it's important to highlight that we are the epicenter of subsidized housing in Albany County. And to go back to the original point of, we don't want to concentrate poverty in our historically underserved neighborhoods, the facts are that for decades, we have. And the map on page 4 shows you that those subsidized projects are being concentrated in West Hill, Arbor Hill, and South End. The exact thing that this body said they didn't want to have continue to happen. And the mayor agrees we don't want to have continue to happen. That being said, when you go to slides 5 and 6, Slide 5 shows that it is a fact that we have seen essentially a building moratorium in the last 2 years. And this slide shows you housing unit production this year versus the 3-year average versus the 5-year average. There's a precipitous decline in the construction of market rate housing in the city of Albany. And we're not building inclusionary units either. That slide, the chart on the bottom right corner of slide 5 shows that as well. The audit also showed that rental rates are actually, the city of Albany has low median rent compared to the rest of the county, state, and the country. That's not to say that rents are low. It's to highlight that compared to our neighbors, we are relatively competitive. However, when we go to slide 8, the audit also said we have a massive demand for housing, both owner-occupied housing, rental housing, 1 and 2 bedroom units, households earning greater than $50,000. We have demand at every income level. And with the inclusionary zoning rules that were put in place by this council, and yes, over the veto of the mayor twice, we are only building housing that is subsidized for our lowest income individuals. We're not building housing for the other income levels. And so slides 9 and 10 show you that analysis in action. Again, these are slides from Chief City Auditor Dr. Dorsey-Aplears' audit that show that the 2017 ordinance, as penciled out with a hypothetical project, actually, it was feasible to build. But under the 2023 ordinance, it is not feasible to build. This is the math. This is the data. This is the raw facts. Slides 11 and 12, again, highlight not only that the old version used to work and that the new version is not working, but that we have a significant demand for housing in the 50 to 80% AMI range. And that's important to highlight because on slides 13 and 14, we have penciled out here what happened when we had the inclusionary zoning rules from 2017 and then the change in 2023. On slide 13, there's 2 charts. The chart at the top shows you that family size 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it compares the 2023 City of Albany median income, which was the rule under the 2017 inclusionary zoning rules. That was the legislation that Dr. Aplears helped sponsor, that was signed into law, that was the rule for 6 years. 2023 median income, which essentially was 70% of the area median income, the Troy, Albany, Schenectady area median income. That income level in 2023 was $55,000 approximately. When the council changed inclusionary zoning in 2023, this body changed the rule to 60% area median income, which equates today to $48,000. An 11% reduction in eligibility for, again, some of our lowest income residents. That bottom half of that chart highlights this inequity even further, because the bottom half of this chart shows you how inflation has pushed the area median income from $78,000 in 2023 to $81,000 today, which is approximately 3.5% increase. So taken together with inflation and the change that the Common Council made, we have reduced eligibility by approximately 14%. The chart on slide 14 shows you how that impacts the City of Albany's workforce. Under the 2023 rules, approximately 410 city employees were eligible for an inclusionary unit. When the council changed the rule, it reduced that eligibility by nearly half to 228. So again, we have made it harder for the people who are earning $49,000 a year to find market rate housing in the city of Albany. I'm not talking about people who make six figures. I'm not talking about people who make $250,000. I'm talking about people who don't even make $50,000. That is what this change has done. And that is what this change, the impact this change has had on our residents who are, again, in that 50 to 80% AMI band. And finally, slides 15, 16, and 17 really talk about the analysis that Capitalize Albany's consultant undertook regarding an in lieu payment option. That in lieu payments are a form of alternative inclusionary zoning policy. Other municipalities in the state and across the country use them. And that based on, again, these factors change based on AMI, interest rates, things that change every single day. We all watch the news. Tariffs impact these changes, construction costs, labor costs. But that approximately $10,000 is really the ceiling for a penciling out of an in lieu payment, which is why we started, and Councilmember Clark proposed to change his legislation to $10,000 for the 0% buy down. So, all that being said, I just want to really reiterate here that the reality is we have been talking about inclusionary zoning for years. When the amendments were proposed back in 2022 and 2023, our economic development professionals said repeatedly, the math doesn't math. And despite that recommendation, and taking into account the people I hear this evening who say we need to look at the data, I'm here to reiterate that not only am I a data person, but this administration is led by someone who uses data every single day. And the data is clear, and it's been clear since day one. It's been clear over the last 2 years where the mayor has raised this issue at both of her State of the Cities, at both of her budget presentations, in letters to this body after the enactment of both budgets, in conversations, everywhere in between, that the data shows that the math doesn't math, and that the current rules, as laid out, are not working. And not only are we saying it, but I think it's fair to say that the Chief City Auditor's audit is also highlighting that inclusionary zoning, as currently formed, is not having the intended effect that it was desired to have, and that we need to think long and hard about what we do to fix that. And so when we talk about being lame ducks, I think most lame ducks would have taken a very difficult issue and run away from it. And the fact of the matter is that we're here, and if I keep talking, it will be the 11th hour of nearly the 11th day of the 11th month of Mayor Sheehan's 11th year as mayor. And we're still here trying to solve this problem because it has such a huge impact on the future of the city. The governor has proposed $400 million to invest in downtown Albany. And we are running the risk of having that investment fail because we can't make projects pencil out, and we can't make market rate housing affordable to build and be able to create more housing at every income level. We are continuing to build subsidized housing. We need to build housing at every income level. And that's why we're trying on this day to make this work. And we'll continue to try until December 31st. But I cannot stress enough how important it is that we solve this problem as soon as possible, because kicking down the can down the road is only going to exacerbate the issue. I personally believe it's going to be a distraction for the incoming administration that's trying to focus on a variety of goals to take Albany to the next level. And yet we're here talking about the same issue for the last essentially 4 years. And so with that, I'm also joined by our Commissioner of Neighborhood Services, Faye Andrews, and our President of our Capitalize Albany Corporation and IDA, Ashley Mole. And we're happy to take questions and talk about this more, because we want to make it work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And also I want to thank everyone who is here and who's been here, who came out in the snow to have this conversation. So, let's do it. I want to start with one slide that has been bothering me in the audit. Page 156, it's not in your slide book. It's basically the summary of feasibility, where the audit says in this page that, you know, inclusionary housing is not the only factor that can be looked at to have affected market rate housing. It talks about increases in interest rates, as well as construction and other issues that have occurred when it comes. So I just want to make sure we're clear that the audit, you know, does not say to eliminate. It does give us some very clear recommendations of how we should address it. The audit also says on page 164 that 84% of the need for unit growth is going to come from residents who are at the 50% AMI or lower. So I think it's important as we have these conversations that we look at all the different parts of the audit so that we don't just focus on one topic, because it's easy for us to get distracted with the fact that the audit had a lot of good information, and we could all take information from that and use it for our arguments. But I'm hoping we can instead take this opportunity with all of us here to try to come up with something that can work for our city. So I'm willing to stay as long as it takes, even if it means that we stay to the 11th hour. And I mean that, to see if we can come up with something that works. And I hope that the housing advocates are willing to stay as well, because I think it's important that all voices are in the room. Councilmember Zama.
Just a quick question about the speakers. We definitely want to hear from all sides, as you famously say, right? So we do have a couple of developers in the room.
They're more than welcome.
I don't know if you need to be invited to come up and join the conversation, or if, I'm not sure if you had a plan, Mr. Chairman.
Just be aware, once you come in, everything becomes public record, and you might get questions. And I say that because the reason we've had individuals not want to join in the past is because they may not want to be exposed. But you're more than welcome.
Well, but we certainly would. We're all going to be civil and respectful, obviously.
I think we are.
I think
I
so.
think we are. You guys are here. Take a seat over here, guys. Welcome. Welcome to the conversation. Okay, so with that said, are there any questions for Mr. Gallen from committee members? Starting with Councilmember Hoey.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you. David, one of the things I didn't see, and again, I didn't read word for word through the audit report, I didn't see any reference to Airbnbs, short-term rentals, and the impact that they have on housing in the city. And that's kind of a newer thing. Back in 2017, we didn't have Airbnb at the level it is now. And I know in my ward, in 15th Ward, I have at least, I want to say around 15 to 20 units that are short-term rentals. So was that, did I miss it in the audit report?
I heard a yes. Who said that?
It does address the Airbnbs in the audit report.
Sorry, do you know what page?
I'll look it up for you.
Thank you.
That's page 62.
Councilmember Zama.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is, I just want to be clear. So the housing audit is saying that the construction of affordable housing, of subsidized housing, has not declined. Right? Has actually, so like a building on Coleman Avenue that was built relatively quickly, it looks beautiful from the outside, that's 100% subsidized housing? Okay. So can somebody sort of explain, maybe one of the folks in the business, just explain to us practically how a developer can build that beautiful looking apartments on Colvin Avenue so quickly, and you guys are saying it's not feasible for you to. Just break it down, please.
And I'm going to ask the developers if you could just introduce yourselves as you speak. Thank you.
Jeff Morrell from Rosenblum Development.
Ryan Jankow, Jankow Companies.
So, cryptic message about public comments aside, I think I was here last time speaking to everyone quite frankly about, our position on this. And I'll start by saying what I said before, which was we agree on the intent. It's simply the mechanics of the current inclusionary zoning that don't work. And if you need data, well, there's been 2 years of no construction of market rate housing. So I think that's a pretty stark data point to go with. And Alfredo, I think we had a conversation outside chamber immediately after the vote 2 years ago. And I remember saying to you, I hope I'm wrong, because I care deeply about the city and the future of the city. And unfortunately, that hasn't been how reality has played out. So to answer your question, the subsidized housing is an entirely different funding capital stack. There are access to offsets so that rents that are set by HUD, a renter in those who qualifies for that type of housing, pays a maximum of 30% of their income, their household income. HUD makes up the difference of that, and there are also other vehicles that are built into that. Other funding sources, grant sources, federal home loan banking. I'm not a subsidized housing developer, so I can only speak, relatively high level about it. Certainly inviting someone in who's more of an expert would be recommended, but that is my understanding. With market rate development, again, we are raising capital from investors and from financial institutions. We are, it's interesting, 2 years ago, prices were beginning to plateau to the extent of 20, 30, 40%. And the market never returned those costs. We achieved a new normal of expense, and that expense carries all the way down the line from the source of the material to the builder who is then erecting, the building or doing the adaptive construction. On top of that, we've seen the cost of capital increase by tremendous margins. We are now starting to feel the impacts of tariffs. For a data point, I'm happy to share an article from today about that. There was an opportunity to warehouse materials after, the so-called Liberation Day, and that helped to delay the impact of tariffs. Well, that's now going to start hitting the market in a very meaningful way. It has become very difficult to build housing, even more difficult. And in our practice, where we have a focus on sustainability, we see a cost on top of all of that of 5 to 15%. And you could say we would recoup that cost, from energy savings. And that would probably be true. It takes about 12 to 15 years to see that return. And that all depends on if your cost of electricity doesn't double, which it did last year. So what we're facing here is not a lack of desire to build housing. We are facing more impossible odds to build reasonably priced housing than ever before. And, I think as well intended as inclusionary zoning has had, it fights a very simple principle, which is supply and demand. The more that you do to make building housing more difficult, the less housing units get built. The less housing units that get built mean those that are existing presently see their rents go up. We will continue to see rents go up as long as there is not sufficient supply. And I appreciated the gentleman's comment about, you know, using some of the proposed fees to buy down, so to speak, the inclusionary zoning units, going to repairing and putting back into active use the you know, so-called red X buildings. That would certainly be one way to answer the supply issue. Another data point, look at the city of Austin. It's unusual because rents have gone down. Why have rents gone down in the city of Austin? They've gone down because they built so much housing, and a lot of it built and in the pipeline before we saw the kind of increases we've seen in the last 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, that it had the market effect of driving down pricing across the board and stratifying housing to get to that middle, that missing middle housing that we so desperately need here in the city of Albany. So, you know, I would say this is, you know, this is not so much, let's not keep finding sticks to try to force the solution. Let's find more carrots to work cooperatively in order to address this in a more pragmatic and feasible way. That's really what this conversation is about.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm still, so what would it take for a developer to be able to build mixed income housing? Right now, it sounds like what you're saying is it's not feasible. There aren't the, you're not getting the same sort of subsidies or help that 100% does.
It starts with lowering your cost of construction and your overall project cost.
You know, for market rate apartments, we don't have the ability to get these, you know, interest rate credits. So for example, a affordable housing developer, when they build a certain percentage on their AMI, whether 30%, 50% AMI, they're borrowing money at a significant cheaper rate than we are. You know, unfortunately, when you build market rate apartments, there's no help, right? The only help that we're asking for typically is from the IDA for a tax pilot, because, you know, if you're not really familiar with the way the city of Albany and the taxes work, we're getting assessed, you know, roughly $100,000 a unit. So if I build a 100, you know, let's just say from easy math, I build a 100 unit building, they assess that at $100,000 a door. So it's a $10 million valuation. Well, at our tax rate right now, I believe it's about $35 per thousand, it's $350,000, right? So if we're talking numbers, our tax number for us to, you know, to balance out our numbers, our tax number could only be 11% of our total gross. So if you think about that, if I were to charge $2,000 a month on 100 units, right, $200,000 a month, 2.4 million, my taxes can only be about $260,000. Right out of the gate, they'd be $350,000. All the IDA is doing to help us is they're resetting that tax number back to basically $260,000. So every time, you know, people talk to us and they say we're getting these tax abatements, we're not putting money in our pocket. The reason we need them is because without them, the project is upside down day one. They are resetting the tax number to what the taxes should be, which is like 11% of our rent. 99% of the time, the properties that we purchase, the taxes that the current owner pays is less than that anyway, right? So when I did the Palladium project, you know, they were paying $65,000 a year in taxes. We got a pilot, but our tax bill is $125,000. So we actually doubled the tax revenue coming in on that project day one. You know, I think the misconception is that when we get these tax abatements, it's we're pocketing money, which is not the case, right? So we need pilots, especially in the city of Albany, because the taxes are so out of whack, right? Everyone knows that. You know, and then again, when it comes down to us borrowing money, there's no, there's no incentives for us on market rate apartments from the financing perspective, from labor, from you know, supply. You know, we're paying full price on everything. And, you know, we just have to charge a certain dollar in rent to make that. And then like Jeff's saying, National Grid went up, you know, double. Insurance rates have doubled in the last couple of years. We can't negotiate, right? So when we look at our expenses, right, we have taxes, I can't negotiate the taxes. We have National Grid, I can't negotiate National Grid. We have insurance, very difficult right now to, to negotiate with insurance. We have staff that we want to pay a working wage, a livable wage, so we're paying them. We have snow plowing and landscaping and cleaning. All of that's going up. Every one of our expenses has gone up. Nothing's come down. And then the other thing, when we're talking about AMI, if you guys are using a number, we want to be at 70% AMI. If I were to build an apartment with no amenities, right, and that rent should be $1,600 a month, and the AMI is $1,400, right? Like that's the max we could charge. Well, if I build a building with full amenities and a gym and a pool, and that rent, because of all of the amenities that we're putting in, needs to be at $2,000 a month, right? The delta just went from $200 to $600, right? The AMI isn't changing on the product that we're building. So it's like, are you saying for us to meet the AMI level, it's like we need to now build a inferior product with less amenities, so our delta, so we could charge what the AMI is. And what that's doing, and if you look in the housing audit on page 155, 81 to 100%, 100 to 120, and 120 to 150, the supply and demand, that's where it actually flips, right? So if you look at the housing audit and the data, we need the most supply for the 80% and up AMI. And we're right, I think we're all in agreement, we need to solve the issue of the below 30% AMI. The only way for us to be able to put those projects up is with a substantial amount of government assistance. We're getting credits, cheaper financing, grants, sometimes forgiveness of taxes, right? Because we have to lower all of these expenses to be able to charge this number. But when we talk about like inclusionary housing, one of the questions we're bouncing around and we ask is, are we trying to build inclusionary housing where we want to take someone who's making 60% AMI and 100% and put them in the same building? Or can we do inclusionary housing where they're staying in the same neighborhood? Because we have buildings that, we charge market rate, but 2 doors down, you could rent a one bedroom for $1,400 a month, including heat and hot water. I have buildings in the city of Albany that you could get a studio for $1,100 a month, including heat and hot water. It's not going to have a gym and a rooftop pool and indoor parking. It costs a lot of money for us to build that. But you could live in the same neighborhood as everyone else, right? So we're not. So when we talk about this inclusionary zoning and inclusionary housing, I think we could build mixed income neighborhoods, but it's very difficult to build mixed income housing.
And to address your question directly, Councilwoman Zamber, and going back to the point about the Red X buildings, the sad irony of what's happening is the beneficiaries of the current inclusionary zoning policy are bad landlords because they have no incentive to invest in their properties, and yet their rents go up. We need to offset that by, one, as Ryan said, providing a diversity of product and providing a higher quantity of product. And anything that mitigates the ability to do that, and it's not because, again, this isn't a want. It's simple. It's unfortunately a balance sheet decision that I can either afford to build a building or renovate a building, or I cannot. And unfortunately, right now, this policy has made it such that it's much more difficult to build. And so we have to take our investment, and by the way, our risk, because there's tremendous risk in what we do. Development is a game of risk, and this just increments the risk. I think also, to put a fine point on it, we all have mortgages on our homes. I couldn't pay cash for my house. We have the same obligations to the bank, and the bank is going to look for a return. They're not just looking for the interest rate, the interest payment. They're looking for a guarantee, what they call a debt service coverage ratio, that says that you're not only going to make enough money to pay your mortgage, but you need to have a covenanted amount above your mortgage before we would even consider doing a loan. So, you know, it's not like we can whip out 10, 20, 30, $40 million to build a building and hope it all works out. We need to work with our lenders, we need to work with our investors, we need to show them a reasonable return in order to get these buildings built. And we've been put, you know, on, you know, it's unfortunate that we've been put on our back feet with this policy, and this is an opportunity to hopefully make some changes that make these projects more feasible again, so that we can start building again in Albany. Because I'm sure we all saw there is building in other municipalities, and it's not just our suburbs. You know, Troy has had several thousand units built or in the pipeline. And the difference is, you know, what are the differences in the economics? Well, this is a big one.
Okay, I'm going to try to, because we have a lot of speakers and we have a lot of, so I'm going to try to keep everybody at 5 minutes, just so we can get everybody's comment. But again, I do appreciate those perspectives. I'm going to give a little pushback. We did see a huge boom in housing in 2017 to 2022, but we did not see a huge boom in reduction of rents in that time. So the idea that we build, we're just going to see a reduction of rents, we haven't seen that. So I think that's part of why we are where we are. But I'm going to continue with the speakers, because I do want to respect all the council members that have put their hands up. I have Megan, then Sergio, then Councilmember Anani.
I literally put my hand up to respond to Councilmember Zamber's questions about how LIHTC gets financed, and I texted them to her.
No, it was more that I wanted it on the record. I appreciate that, but it was more that I wanted to hear it from the folks actually experiencing it.
And my only other point for the record is that there's a piece, Albany Housing Authority finances and provides 1% to 3% of the financing costs for most of our LIHTC projects. So that's not loans, it's not a mortgage payment, it is money that is guaranteed upfront for those projects. So again, it reduces the cost burden. So that's really all I had my hand up for.
Thank you. Next is Councilmember Adams.
Yeah, mine works. They finally fixed it. Question for our developer friends here. So one of the things that I've been trying to maybe explain or get a better understanding is if a mandatory density bonus would help offset some of the inclusionary requirements that are being placed on you. If there is a number that you think or know that works in order to kind of fill in that gap. Do you have any thoughts or opinions on that?
So if you kind of see what we both build and everyone in the city, right, we keep it to a certain height for probably a couple of specific reasons. One, the code allows us to build 4 stories of wood over a concrete podium. So if you look at, for example, the building across from St. Peter's that I did, first floor is concrete, we have commercial space and retail space, we pour a concrete deck, and then we could build 4 stories of wood. The building I did at the old Palladium site, the Rise Pine Hills, there's an underground parking garage, and then it's a concrete deck and 4 stories of wood. Once we go above that, it changes everything that we have to do code-wise to more steel, different electrical wire and conduit versus exposed, you know, so it's MC cable, different sprinkler systems, like the whole code changes. So here, unfortunately, that's why we kind of keep it at that 4-story number, because once we go up, now the metrics for us financially almost never make sense.
Right. And there's an additional component to that, which is, you know, we want to build something that's contextually appropriate. You know, we don't want to drop a tower into a mid or low-rise residential neighborhood. So, you know, the density bonus is fine, but as Ryan said, you know, that extra floor can increment your cost greatly. I think at the end of the day, we're still, you know, you're still talking about additional units as a percentage of the total number of units in the building. So you still have that problem of you know, artificially lower rents and how to overcome that. And you're looking to do a project that fits into the neighborhood. It's really important, you know, and that's, by the way, that's another place where we end up spending more money, right? Because we have an old city. There's a lot of brick, there's a lot of brownstone, you know, and we want to make sure as we're going through that planning process, and I think our friends on preservation, you know, rightly so, want to make sure that particularly when it's new construction that we're not cheaping out and throwing up a building that isn't appropriate, you know, and you know, I'll say this, I think Ryan's company, my company, we just wouldn't do that. Maybe there are other developers who are comfortable with that. We're not. You know, we want to develop a quality product, and I think that's the point that Ryan earlier made, is that, you know, we don't have to develop here. We'd like to, but it has to make financial sense.
Thank you. Also then, in regards to your comment earlier in regards to the off-site housing, to kind of fill that gap for the inclusionary housing, can you just give a little few more sentences or thought to that as to what you may have been bouncing around?
As far as like a buyout, or?
Yeah, in terms of the buyout, you know.
Yeah, I mean, 'cause
having
this is money that, again, like everyone thinks developers are just raking in this abundant amount of money with huge profit margins, which is just, it's just not the case. So, you know, if you look at this housing audit, one of the things that they're talking about is like a gap in financing, right? Where, you know, to break it down one step further, just go back a second. Starting development in the city already has enough challenges because it's our highest starting cost. When we look at a project in Guilderland or Clifton Park, we're starting with land, right? There's trees and land. When I did the project across from St. Peter's, I have to start with five like existing buildings, go in, do a bunch of asbestos removal, which costs hundreds, if not millions of dollars, demolish it, and now I have this piece of vacant land, right? So, you know, it's all public record. Like that piece of vacant land for me, I bought land at $5.5 million, spent $1 million in asbestos removal, and then we had to knock it down, right? So we're starting at $6.5, $7 million to put a structure up. In like Guilderland, we could pay $500,000, $1 million for acres of land, and we're building two-story garden-style apartments with no elevators, with no underground parking garages, all wood. The insurance is less because the insurance companies really want multiple buildings spread at least 60 feet apart, right? It brings the insurance down. We can't do that here. In the city of Albany, we have so many challenges, and that's why, like, when we're giving you the data, and you know, sometimes we get a lot of pushback, but it's real numbers. Like, we look at our numbers, we have spreadsheets, we have metrics, and we cannot make these numbers work. And then you have inclusionary on top of it, right? It just, you know, so we're looking at these outside, you know, I think the offset is if we could buy out some of this, we could start building projects, and then, you know, the city could take that money to maybe renovate some of the 2 families, 3 families in those neighborhoods, bring people back into the neighborhood. Again, the inclusionary, I think we need to look at inclusionary housing in the form of the neighborhood and not so much mixed income housing versus mixed income neighborhoods.
I agree. I think it should focus on community development. Just another last question. Does the in lieu payment amount, does that fit into the equation to make it more affordable for you guys, or do you see that as another obstacle as well?
You mean for pilots?
Yeah.
Without pilots, inclusionary or non-inclusionary, without a pilot, the project doesn't work from day one.
So just to make sure, the in lieu payments to buy out of the inclusionary housing, to buy out of it. So to get it back down to that 5%, right, in the draft language, is that 10,000 or 15,000? Does that fit into the amount that makes a project, or could work? Obviously, every project is going to be different, but.
Yeah, I think our numbers, when we were running through it, I think we originally, when talking to David and other members, it was like 5,000 to buy down to 5%, and I believe 10,000 to buy down to, you know, if I build a 150-unit apartment complex, 13%, 19 and a half, you know, call it 20 units, for us to buy out, it's still $200,000.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot. In the grand scheme of things, it's a lot of money that we have to additionally raise, additionally pay investment money on. The borrowing's more. You know, and then the other thing that, you know, we have to deal with that you guys don't understand, you know, necessarily understand is when we build a project, let's say with like construction money from a regional bank, right? Our job is we then need to permit out. We get permanent financing from Fannie, Freddie Mac, HUD, right? We go outside basically the government, right? they don't understand that, like, we have this inclusionary housing, so they don't factor that in. So we get, you know, we're also getting penalized on the other side, because they're going, hey, you should be charging X dollars for this unit, you're charging this. We're still gonna appraise it as a full apartment. Even though you're charging less money, we're basically making it come up with, you know, full market cost, and like, it just is, you know, that's the other side of it for us too, right? It's really both sides.
Thank you. That was helpful.
Councilmember Adams? I'm sorry, Councilmember Owusu?
Anani, that's fine. Thank you, Chair, and thank you all so much for everyone being here. And my question is more so for, some of it is more so for the developers and also for the administration as well. First, just want to thank you guys for, you know, the buildings, particularly Rise, the Palladium Rise. It's just an asset to our community, and we really appreciate it. So my first question is more so to the developers. Can you put in, like, rough terms, percentages of all the factors that play into the decision to develop a property?
How long do we have? I mean, the short answer is no, because I think, and I'd encourage you to look at some of the data that I know has been provided by Capitalize Albany. You know, you have the hard costs of the project, you have soft costs of the project, you have all your design fees, you have your engineering, your civil engineering, you have your unforeseen conditions, again, your urban fill conditions. You know, the dirt that you remove, you know, is that former, you know, 1950s years or early buildings that just were collapsed into their basements and therefore are structurally unsuitable. So you have to remove all that, potentially remediate things like transite roofing, which is an asbestos product that was also buried in that land, and then bring in clean fill, so that you have to pay the dumping and then the clean fill. You have to look at stormwater, you have to look at sewer, are there changes to the infrastructure? I'm currently dealing with a 6-figure bill to bring electric to our building, a project that we're doing in Troy. You know, we have to look at the rents, we have to look at the cost of operation, you know, we have to look at zoning requirements, parking requirements, air right requirements, height requirements, historic requirements. Anybody getting tired yet? You know, we have to look at financing rates. We have to look at what's available from lenders. We have to look usually for grant opportunities and others doing to offset some of these costs which are increasing. You know, we've got to track things like tariffs and supply chain. We're dealing with a historic labor shortage. So, you know, and unfortunately, a generation of experienced tradespeople are beginning to retire, and there are not nearly the bodies to replace them, and we're losing an opportunity for transferable skills there. You know, maybe that worm begins to turn. I'm encouraged, and we're very supportive of you know, operations like BOCES, where we're seeing an interest in the trades again, but that'll take 10 to 20 years to bear fruit, you know, on a job site. You know, all of this, by the way, is happening before you get a shovel in the ground. You know, so these are all, there are countless myriad factors. The ground is constantly shifting under our feet, literally and figuratively. And that's why I say this is a game of risk. And, you know, any additional burden on a project is going to make it harder to realize a project.
Councilman, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to know specifically percentages, like breakdown of what it goes into actually developing a property, percentage breakdown. Like, if you don't have that, that's fine. I'll go to the next question. Like, give like a rough estimate of percentage breakdown of like what it goes into actually building a property in the city.
That's I'm not following in like a dollar amount or like a like finance.
Just like, okay, so just if you have a project, percentage as relates to what goes to materials, what percentage goes towards, you know, particularly maybe like labor, et cetera. Those are some of the things that I was curious about. It varies.
Hard metric. I mean, you hear different things. It can be what, 40% materials, 60% labor on, and in your hard costs, but that's not a factor on your soft costs. You know, and by the way, you're paying more in soft costs these days. We pay more because we're doing energy model. We have to do performance verification, energy modeling, you know, more rigorous building control design. So our soft costs have also gotten higher along with our hard costs.
I think also the complexity of the site. So again, you know, I'm just doing Midtown, so I could use that as an example. You know, we're basically block to block. We don't have a lay-down area. My contractors have no parking. You know, sometimes we're paying for parking. You know, again, the urban infill sites, especially in the cities, make it more challenging. So therefore, the projects are taking longer to put up. And then our carrying cost for interest, you know, the construction cost is taking longer for us. So we're paying a lot more interest because the hold period is taking longer to put up.
All right, thank you. And my next question is more so, I know it was noted that currently there's been affordable housing being built in the city, and there's been several affordable housing units that's been proposed. Essentially, what are we doing to make sure that the affordable housing is not being built in historical red line districts or not neighborhoods, but also being spread out all across the city, so we're not building a concentration of neighborhoods of poverty?
I think that would probably go. No, I think that would go probably to David.
David, yeah.
Sorry, what did you say?
No, I was saying more so, like, you know, you made a mention that there's been affordable housing that's being built in the city, and currently there are some that's on the pipeline. What are we doing to make sure that it's not being built in concentrated poverty neighborhoods, poverty-stricken neighborhoods?
Being here this evening, trying to amend this legislation so that we can create the mixed income neighborhoods that I think we all desire. I mean, I think, you know, I think to your point, and I'm not trying to be cute about it, I'm being honest, like that's, I think Ryan and Jeff both said, when you have more supply and more competition, it drives the income diversity, it drives the diversity of the product. And then when you also look at slide 2, where it lists the private affordable projects in the pipeline right now, you look at pretty much all of these, excuse me, and they're all either in downtown/Arbor Hill, West Hill, or I think one of these is, oh no, one of them is not Calvin. Take that back. Yeah, so downtown, Arbor Hill, West Hill. And you look at the properties like the Red Carpet Inn, for example. That was a site where you did have an opportunity to build, but it was a vacant property, a hotel that was closed for years. The cost of acquiring, I assume, would be lower. But again, that happens to be in, you know, it's technically in North Albany, but again, in a census tract where you have some of the lowest incomes in the region, never mind the city. And so part of that is the historic redlining, the concentration of poverty, the disinvestment that leads to vacant and abandoned buildings, that leads to properties that cost less than properties that are occupied, that then allows some developers, particularly these private affordable developers, to be able to buy them and rebuild them because they're getting the subsidies from the state and federal government. I think that really, to try to address the root of what I think you're asking, that's the problem. Is we've had decades of disinvestment in Arbor Hill, the South End, and West Hill, and because of that, the blight has allowed properties to either stay stagnant or devalue relative to the properties in other neighborhoods, and then that creates an opportunity for a developer to come in and say, oh, okay, I'll convert this abandoned hotel to subsidized housing because the numbers work.
Yeah, I think it also really has to, it also begins with our starting point, right, going back to the land. You know, if I use an example, let's say Buckingham Pond. You know, we're going to pay an absolute premium. You know, just imagine this. If we went into Buckingham Pond and bought up a row of houses to knock them down to build an apartment complex, right? Like, we're not picking those houses up at an inexpensive price. So for us to go into, you know, what you're talking about is we're buying our starting point from like a previous landowner. They're dictating the market as well, right? Like but again, I paid $5.5 million for land across from St. Peter's Hospital. I can't pay $5.5 million for that land and then go build affordable apartments. The metrics don't work. You know, I have to build market rate apartments. You know, in Arbor Hill or West End or you know, even parts in, you know, downtown, you could buy vacant buildings or plots of land for significantly less money.
And I think to add to Ryan's point that he made earlier about you know, we keep going back to the property across from St. Peter's where he talked about how 2 doors down you have apartments that are renting at $1,400 a month. When you're creating those neighborhoods that have that mixed income housing, that is addressing the issue of not concentrating poverty. And by having the ability to build, quote, market rate housing, which is, for purposes of this conversation, as I think of it, as housing that's not subsidized. So that could mean housing that's affordable to a person who makes $50,000 or $60,000, encouraging and allowing that development to occur and pencil out for the developers and the lenders and the investors creates that supply that counters the concentration of poverty that we've seen for decades and that we are continuing to see.
I think the city of Albany also has to realize like the competition that we face is when I'm showing the apartment across from the hospital, whether it's a nurse, a doctor, or someone in janitorial or admin, and they go, we want to live within a 15-minute drive of, you know, our job site. You know, if you picture New York City, right? That's New York City. You're not going to go live in Brooklyn. It's too far. When someone comes to me and says, hey, we're looking at a 15-minute drive, and I say, all right, well, where are you going next? We're going to go look in Troy. There's a brand new apartment complex over in Guilderland. We're looking in, you know, Loudonville. We're looking in Colony. Like 15 minutes is a far area, right? So like we're losing the people that want market rate apartments. You're going to push them out of the city of Albany into the surrounding suburbs because we are building products currently in those markets because we cannot make numbers work in Albany.
And the audit showed that there are tens, if not over a 6-figure number of people who are commuting into the city every day.
And the audit showed the largest need is under 30% AMI and above 80% AMI.
And another point too, that is more of those projects in Guilderland and those outskirts are much bigger units than some of the ones that we find in the city of Albany. So if you're looking for that 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom, those are more likely the places you'll find it, out in Troy, Delmar, Guilderland.
And you know, Apex and Guilderland, you know, use them. They're charging, you know, they have, you know, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom apartments. They're 4,000. They're 4,000. Yeah, like cheaper to build, but they're charging $3,000 to $4,000.
I'd like to reclaim my time.
Okay.
I'd like to reclaim my time. Just last. Oh, good.
I know Megan had a point of information, and then I'd like to go to Maria. But before I go to Maria after Megan, I'd like to also make a point of information.
Councilmember Anani, going all the way back about 15 minutes ago, asked about why and how actual low-income housing gets built in the city, and there's an important point of information in there. Way back when HUD was developed and HUD allowed for states to designate HUD authorities, what happened in New York State is that they designated authorities by municipality. So the city of Albany is one of the few entities in the entire capital region, with the exception of Schenectady, Troy, and Cohoes, that has the capacity to even build public housing or finance low-income housing development. So just let that sink in, because by state and federal policy, you cannot have a regional plan for low-income housing development anywhere outside of those core urban areas. And that is explicitly direct policy decisions. The town of Colony is the only other municipal entity in Albany County that has a HUD designation, but that is only for Section 8 development. That's private landlord development and small build. They do not have the capacity to do commercial low-income housing development. And so I think it's important in the context of Councilmember Zanani's question, as well as some of the things that came up in the audit report, for everyone who's listening and everybody who's part of this body to understand that we are continually going to be on the hook for housing very low-income people, because we are one of the few municipalities that has the capacity to develop that kind of housing. It is incredibly unfair to the city of Albany in the way that those things were set up and designated, but we have no ability to undo that. Those are decisions that are made at the state level and decisions that are made at the federal level.
Thank you. I'm going to do just a quick point of information, because I know there's been a lot of information saying that, you know, there's a need everywhere, and I do agree that there's a need of housing at all income levels, but I also think it's important that we look at slide 12 or page 155 of the audit, and it shows very clearly that for 2020-30, the greatest need is going to be from 0 to 80. And I think that's important for us to, you know, be very open and frank about it, that from 0 to 80 is the majority of the need. And that is, again, slide 12 on the handout. That's the second figure. So I just want to make sure as we have this conversation that we're looking at the data and we're looking at where's the need, and you know, again, it's everywhere. I've said it before, I want everyone to live in our city. I want the doctors, the nurses, I want the people who pull the trash, all of them to be able to want to live in our city. But I also want us to be clear about what the data is telling us of where the need is. And I'm going to allow Councilmember Anani to finish his question, and then Maria has been waiting patiently.
Just in the city or like overall?
In the city of...
Two companies, separate companies.
Currently 80 units. One building. In downtown Albany on Broadway, technically in the Arbor Hill neighborhood. It's actually within Arbor Hill, but it is on Broadway. Nope. Clinton Square. We opened it in 2024. Correct. The 5%, correct. I mean, we are, of course, we're compliant. No. We'd like to, and we've looked at several projects, but the change in the regulation has made it unfeasible.
Close to 400. 400. On the corner of South Lake and Western, there's an 8-story, the old Eloise building. It's an 8-story building, brick. And it is, honestly, specifically in that building, we have apartments that go from probably $1,100 to $1,500, from studios to 2 bedrooms, inclusive of heat and hot water. So to me, that fits right in the fact of, we have units available there today for people in the 60 to 80% AMI level to rent that. And then the old Palladium bowling alley site, we converted that one into the Rise Pine Hills, and then across from St. Peter's, that's 190 apartments, and that's market rate as well. Oh, and actually we bought a building from St. Rose 2 years ago on State Street in between Lark and Dove, that's 30 apartments. 2 years ago we bought that building. I did 2 factors. We did 30 apartments there, or 29 apartments. So we only needed to do 2 units, and that was on the National Historic Registrars, so we got an abundance of historic tax credits to offset the cost, and that was the only reason that we were able to do it. So again, the other buildings we did was the old zoning, both of them, and the Palladium, when we did that one, that was also when interest rates, when we were borrowing money at 3% versus 7%. So financially very... Oh, 100%, of course. Oh, yeah, 100% the interest rates have. I would say inclusionary zoning, you know, we're not blaming all of it on inclusionary zoning, right? I mean, we have, yeah, no, I mean, we know, listen, I mean, the city of Albany, right? We have a massive tax issue, right? All of New York State, between the Empire Plaza and Harriman campus and everything, you know, we're burdening a lot of the taxes. So when you look at Albany versus surrounding municipalities, our rate per thousand, or what we're paying in taxes, is significantly higher than those at municipalities. And yeah, you know, interest rates 100% played a factor, but, and then tariffs, you know, tariffs are also playing a factor. Labor shortages are also playing a factor. You know, so the thing for us is when we're building in Guilderland or Colony or Troy, you know, again, the profit margins are very thin, and we're getting projects to just pencil out. The inclusionary, specifically in inclusionary zoning, when we compare apples to apples, the only different common denominator is someone has inclusionary housing and someone doesn't. And the inclusionary housing is the reason that we cannot build here if we compare it apples to apples, because we have this hurdle that nobody else has. But I'm talking about capital region, right? Because my competition is not renting in the city of Albany or Kingston.
I would say it's the difference between a project working and not working. That's how much it's worth. Depends on the project.
I mean, sometimes it's millions, but it's not. Again, we're not saving them millions of dollars, right? When they look at the pilot, they're just looking at basically when you hear the, you know, tax abatement or what the taxes are, they're factoring it over like a 30-year period, right? The difference of what we should be paying if it was full taxes, you know, assessed today versus to make the project work. Again, everyone thinks that we're taking these millions of dollars and pocketing the money, which is not the case. We don't see any of the money from the pilots.
And I
Yeah.
No.
No.
Well, you're not
No.
taxpayers' money.
No.
It's not.
No.
No, it's a steady increase in taxes that
revenue.
we pay into the municipality.
And if the project doesn't happen, then there's no tax revenue from that site.
Usually when we buy a project, the taxes on that parcel are going up from the existing taxes that they're paying.
And there's an additional economic impact, which is if we're building a building, paying the same or slightly increased tax rate that accreases over time to its full assessment, we're also driving economic activity. So take an 80 apartment building, well, that's 110 net new house or net new people in the city of Albany who are going to our restaurants, they're going to our coffee shops, right? They're buying services, they're going to the dentist, right? So that economic impact is worth millions of dollars annually.
Darius Shonfar, City Treasurer. I do the pilot billing. Just generally speaking, a pilot ends up paying about half the taxes that it would otherwise if there was no pilot on the project to begin with. So each pilot is different for each developer and each project. But again, as Ashley said, if you don't add that value by building the building, then so the Palladium's a great example. That would have been taxed at $900,000 a year for the value, and it would have fallen down because it would have dropped because the property was going to fall apart because the owners didn't want it anymore. Now we have an apartment building there that's worth millions, right? With a pilot on it, they pay about half of the increase in value in taxes.
Okay, and just to be clear, it's not what the value of the property is once the building is there. It's the value of what the property was beforehand. So there is still, like you said, a significant savings in what the actual, compared to the actual value of what is brought up, correct?
Correct, yes. But there would not be anything there but for the pilot.
And
Without
I
the
think-
pilot, the thing would never get built in the first place.
I think everyone's agreed that without the pilot, none of these projects will be able to go forward. I think everybody agrees with that. I think the audit agrees with that. I think everyone, I haven't heard any council member or anyone, even the advocates, say that they don't support the pilots for the developers. I just want to make that clear. No one has said that they don't understand that that's part of the process if we're going to see any type of development. So I want to make that clear. I also want to say I really appreciate our developers being here. This is part of what we were not able to do last time. And last time, I'll be 100% honest, we were told by others that developers didn't feel comfortable having this type of conversation, and that they only wanted to have
Not this developer. If you remember, I actually suggested we should all get in a room together and talk.
And I'm pretty sure I talked to two of you three
yes,
times
you did.
a week.
Yes, but what I'm saying is, I'm giving you a compliment, guys. I've given you a compliment. I may not give you too many the rest of the night, but I'm giving you one now. I appreciate you guys being here and making yourself vulnerable to different questions that may come to you in this process and sharing the information. So it's a sincere compliment. It is a sincere compliment and appreciation for you being here. I'm going to allow Councilmember Anani to finish his questions, and then Councilmember Farrell, and then Councilmember Clark.
Yeah, it's a two-part question. Also, there are some people who believe that this inclusionary discussion is taking shape because of state funding that is supposed to be coming down the pipeline, particularly for the downtown neighborhood. Can you speak about that? And also, as relates to what we could all agree on, I know we keep citing the audit that was done, particularly on inclusionary zoning, is that you're saying that the people that need it the most is with the 30% to 50% range, particularly when it comes to the area median income. So that means that the 100% is off the table. We can all agree that the 100% AMI is off the table, and that we can agree close to at least 80%. Is that something that all of us are on board?
I can take both of those. And anyone can chime in, obviously. I mean, for the first question, again, as I said earlier, we've been having this conversation since, Alfredo, when did you first propose this? 2022? Late 2021?
2020.
Was it that long ago?
We started this conversation in 2020 with Chris Spencer.
Oh, right.
And
Yes,
Sarah
yes. I'm sorry.
from Capitalized Housing in 2020. So no, we've been talking about this. I mean, we're like the last to survive, still in the room.
I feel like the Titanic meme where it's been 84 years and here we are. But that being said, we've been talking about it for years, and I'd be lying if I told you that $400 million didn't exacerbate the issue. I mean, I think most of you, if not all of you, have been to at least one, if not all, the presentations that the CAP initiative folks have led, and the presentations the consultants have talked about the lack of, yes, we've built more housing downtown, and it's not enough. And we've heard from the development community for years, particularly the last 2 years, that the current rules are too large of a hurdle to build mixed income housing in the city of Albany. So if we have this $200 million investment in downtown, that I think a lot of people hope would lead to more housing, more feet on the street. We all hear about it. We need a grocery store downtown. We need amenities downtown. Downtown doesn't have enough people. We think it's dead. The only way we reverse that is by getting more people downtown. And to get more people downtown, we need more housing downtown. And so this is a golden opportunity with the $200 million to change that, and not only change the narrative, but change the reality of it. We've been talking about it for a really long time. So, like, yes, two things can be true. Regarding your second question about the 100% AMI, two things. 100% AMI in 2023 was $78,600. It was 70, so slide 13 has this. In 2023, it was $78,600. Today, it's $81,300. That's 100% area median income. If you look at slide 12 from the audit, I would push back on the claim that 100% AMI doesn't matter. The chart on the right, where it says net new housing needed by 2030, for 80%, 81% to 100%, it says there's 50 units needed. So yes, it's substantially lower than the rest of the AMIs below it, but there's still a need for 80% to 100% AMI. The largest total of housing needed by AMI is 0% to 30%, which we've all said all night and for years, we're building subsidized housing for people who are in that 0 to 30% area median income. And we've used the Albany Housing Authority, I'm glad Councilmember Keegan brought it up, the Albany Housing Authority has invested millions of dollars in renovating their housing as well. This body voted on the awarding of over $1 million of ARPA funding toward housing, particularly the renovation of Steamboat Square, which is owned by the Albany Housing Authority. So that's happening. The second largest bracket for AMI need between now and 2030 is the 51 to 80% AMI range. So if we're keeping inclusionary zoning at 60% AMI, we've told 2/3 of that bracket, and again, I want to stress the dollar amount. Right now, 60% AMI is $48,780. So we're telling anyone who makes $49,000 and in the 50s and in the low 60s, we're not building housing for you if we don't change this inclusionary zoning ordinance. And the audit says they are the second second largest bracket for housing demand between now and 2030.
Just a point of information, both bills that are on the floor today, both have it at higher than 60. One has it at 70 and one has it at 100. So I think there's already a compromise there to try to get it above the 60%. But I've got Councilwoman Farrell, who's been waiting, and then Councilman Clark.
Thank you so much, and I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. This is something that I think many of us have wanted for many years and have talked about doing, and I've talked to different people in this room about doing for years, and I think the general conversation we're having is really important because housing is an incredibly complicated subject. It's a complicated policy subject, but then on top of that, you have the realities of actually building or renovating housing, which you can have whatever policy you want. If there's a bunch of tariffs on steel, it is what it is. And that's one of the things that when we passed this in 2023, we passed it twice. And the first time we passed it, and to be clear, the mayor vetoed both of them and was against both of them. But it was the exact same thing that we passed twice. And the first one, after it being discussed for 3 years, Alfredo, we really didn't have, there really wasn't any pushback, anything like that. In between the two votes that we had, the Fed completely changed interest rates. And suddenly we heard from everybody. And that to me was a very eye-opening experience because when we focus on policy, we focus on policy. We're not focused on tariffs, we're not focused on interest rates, we're not focused on anything like that. We're focused on the broader issues impacting the people and things happening in our constituency. But we also have to be aware of what is happening in the broader realm and hopefully craft policy that will be flexible enough or allow development to still happen should there be some wacky person that randomly assigns tariffs to random things at any time, which I can't even imagine doing development through.
And I will say, let me be clear, I'm someone, I want our developers to succeed. I want you to do incredibly well. And I want you to do well from the city of Albany, because that means that we are having growth and development in the city of Albany. I believe in it. But I also strongly believe in making sure that we are paying attention to our most vulnerable populations and crafting policy to make sure that they are thought of every step of the way. And I'm someone that spends all day, every day, basically negotiating concepts, one concept or another. And I know people say it must be this, it must be that. Both can be true, and you can do both. And one of the things I kind of wanted to bring it back to was, while I think the broader conversation is incredibly important, and I will say I adore Councilmember Ballerin saying, like, I'll be here until, and he means it. He is one of the most diligent people. He'll stay here till 1 a.m. talking about this. And I know that there's a lot of other people that would love to stay with them, but I have had, this is a tough work week for me, and I would prefer to not stay that late. But I'm happy to come back and keep talking about it. I'm thrilled to do it. And I just kind of wanted to bring it back to the two pieces of legislation that we're talking about. Because from my perspective, and I've said, as David knows, I offered since 2023 to try to do this, to come up with some sort of compromise, and there was no interest in that. I was told over and over again, there was no buy-in, no interest. And then we got legislation at the very end that basically brought us back further than the 2017 legislation. And one of the big pieces of that is the AMI. And I think it's important when we're talking about AMI to understand what we're talking about, because again, I know a lot of different things about a lot of different things. I don't have the nuance of housing as other people do. When we're talking about area medium income, it is the 5 counties, it's an average of the 5 counties, Albany, Rensselaer, Saratoga, Schenectady, and Schoharie. So you have a wide range of wealth in those counties, including Saratoga Springs, which is incredibly wealthy, and Schoharie County, which I cannot even mention a specific place in Schoharie County off the top of my head, but I know it's very poor. And Albany County, we are on the poor end, but as a county, we're actually a pretty wealthy county, but we have some very poor areas. The city of Albany and the overall AMI, when you're talking about 100% AMI, they're two very different things. When we're looking at the legislation, that to me, when we talk about, and I'm going to use the word unconscionable, doesn't mean I think Councilmember Clark is unconscionable. I think he's wonderful. I think all of my colleagues are wonderful. I fully appreciate Mayor Sheehan. Let's not forget that she is the original champion of due process. I'm sorry, my brain, it's been, good cause eviction, yes. So we have, this is not something where we have a bunch of good guys and bad guys. This is a lot of people who care, including our developers who are actually here tonight very late. I'm sure they've also had long days to talk about this. But from my perspective, when I read that, that is unconscionable to me. To say that something that when we have an average of, and it's agreed, 70% AMI for the original legislation that was amended, that made sense for the city of Albany. And we move that up to 100%. That doesn't make sense for the city of Albany anymore. I know that I work with a municipal salary, so I'm not a great example of the average middle-aged lady, but when I can't afford some of these numbers for 100% AMI, that's a problem. And that is something that is the case with the original legislation. I don't think it's okay that we're even considering anything that has 100% AMI. That is something that absolutely has to change. It's not okay. I will say I also, again, I want the developers to succeed. I want you to build housing. I think pilots are great. I have no problem with pilots. I wish that people understood that when a developer gets a pilot, you're getting at least the amount of money that you were getting before as a municipality. They're not all great. Sometimes there are different requests that are done that are not great, but ultimately the pilots that pass are really good for our city because they do bring in more revenue and they do bring in more people. Thrilled with that. When we're looking at the buyout of getting, if it's something that we need to change this to say, yes, we should be able to write a check for this, I get Ryan's point. Like, I'm spending a whole bunch of money to put a rooftop pool in. I mean, again, I would love to have a rooftop pool, so don't get me wrong on that either. But that's fine. Then what are the numbers that we're talking about? Because it's something that, to me, it's not, the AMI is just out of the question. But if we're really talking about numbers with this, where, and again, I truly believe that Dr. Apliers is a brilliant woman that can deal with a lot of different things, including with this. But I think one of the issues is that we do have this $200 million coming in, and I think the goal right now of the Sheehan administration is making sure that we're able to fully utilize it as a community. And they are seeing that this is one of the barriers. I'm not going to debate that. What I am going to debate is that the original thing that was put out, I will say at the very end of the process, I think was not okay. And I hope, I mean, we don't have much time to change that, but I hope the Apliers administration does not do that. The Sheehan administration on a whole did not, which I appreciate. But I think that we need to actually start talking about, if we want to do this, it's 8:10 at night. What are we talking about in terms of numbers? Like, again, Alfredo will stay here. I'm not a vote. I am not going to stay indefinitely. But I think we actually have to talk about numbers, or if it's something that we want to, that we don't want to move on. So where are we looking at numbers? Because I think the big, and I could be wrong, but I think the big discussion points are the AMI and then the actual number for the buyout. Is there any other major things that I'm missing?
I'm going to allow Councilman Clark. I do know that there's some significant changes in differences when it comes to enforcement, as well as the breakdown of where the funding goes to, that are part of the newer version that I think are significant to some of the parties. But yes, a lot of it is just numbers and math we got to figure out. But before we get there, I'm going to allow Councilman Clark. I'm sorry. Are you done with your, I'm sorry, Jenny, are you done with your?
I one quick note, other than my plea that we start talking about numbers, is that I think that, again, this is amazing, and I actually think that this is an important thing regardless of this legislation, because housing is a very complicated subject and there's a lot of other pieces to it. I would love to have something like this, a broader discussion about housing, because we do have issues like Airbnb. We do have issues that are impacting a lot of different things, like tariffs, that I just think it would be helpful in the new year if we continued this.
Thank you. Councilmember Clark.
Thank you. Just in terms of the numbers, to Councilmember Ballerin's point, with the greatest need being up to 80% AMI, you know, as a sponsor of this legislation, I would be willing to change that 100% to 80%, just as a talking point. You know, we've had a lot of points. I don't necessarily have a question, but you know, when this first came around, we had the people that actually build housing say it doesn't pencil, it doesn't work, and we said, you know, we don't really believe you. We think you can afford the pain. We then had a 2024 State of the City where the mayor brought it up again. I don't think we went 2 years without talking about it. I think she's talked about it on numerous occasions. Yes, this is at the end of the session, but at the same time, with all the other points and potential investments, and the fact that we have been talking about it for this long, you know, we haven't been talking about it in committee, but it has been a point of concern for the city. So, you know, I think we didn't believe the mayor, we didn't believe the people that actually construct it. I'm not going to build any housing. I don't think this council is going to build any housing. So I would like to listen to those that are saying that have actually provided pro formas and said this doesn't work, that we do listen this time. And if we don't believe the current mayor, we don't believe the developers, the audit from our chief city auditor and incoming mayor on page 154 clearly states that the 2023 ordinance is not feasible from an assessment standpoint. Can a developer reasonably finance a project without gap funding? It lists gap funding, you know, over $1 million. Will the investment be profitable? That says not feasible as well. So do appreciate my colleagues considering this, even though I'm a lame duck here, as was indicated. But again, 80% AMI, also willing on the percentage. I think there was a good point about the fact that this legislation's intended to help renters. We had a comment about, you know, what's that percentage look like to help new homeowners or help tenants. I think, you know, let's talk about that as well. But this chance to have a fund that would be available to help new homeowners, potentially help those abandoned properties that we have a number of red X's on, and still have market rate housing developed along with the government housing and LIHTC housing that's already occurring. I mean, we have a report that says 46% of the need of housing is for 30% and below. So, you know, inclusionary housing isn't even touching that need. I don't think we're arguing that there's not a need there. You know, potentially looking at incentivized zoning of affordable housing in other districts. I think the, you know, part of the reality is that, you know, developers, whether it's affordable housing or market rate housing, they're going to have to take either abandoned properties or vacant properties. And, you know, unfortunately, due to historic redlining, where are a number of those properties, those are in those districts. So, you know, if we're able to incentivize otherwise having affordable housing in other wards where available, potentially that's an option to try to move that around a little bit. I don't think that gets accomplished in inclusionary zoning. I would like to see the buyout numbers stay as they are. Just to get back to Councilmember Farrell's points about talking about numbers. So again, 80% AMI, would like to see the buyouts stay as I proposed in my amendment, and then willing to talk about percentages on that buyout money going towards tenant versus homeownership.
Thank you. So two things. One, you're never a lame duck. You've been a good friend to this council, a good public servant. You've given up time with your family and your kids to be here time and time again. So, and you've always been upfront with me about your differences of opinion on this and other policies. So, you know, I hope you never take that as a blow, because, you know, your service is appreciated to this body. And we have differences of opinion, and we definitely have some differences of opinion on this bill, but it doesn't take away or belittle the work and effort you've done over the last 4 years. So I just want to make sure that's part of the public record. With that said, Councilmember Anani, I had you next on my list, and I didn't think, and then one of the developers like to speak.
Just more so for the sponsor, so we're clear. You're willing to make amendments on the AMI, but not on the other percentages? At this time, okay, gotcha. My question is more so for the Albany Community Development Agency. In the legislation, subsection paragraph, it says, shall be payable to Albany Community Development Agency, which shall put 75% of such funds towards tenant-related assistance programs and 25% of such funds towards home ownership. I'm just curious, your thoughts, Commissioner.
Thanks. I mean, I think that's doable. We can certainly make, good use of those funds. I don't know if we would see a huge impact in terms of home ownership assistance. But, we certainly have lost a lot of funding this year, so any little bit would certainly help us. In terms of tenant assistance, I would assume we'd probably RFP those funds out similar to the way we already do for the rental assistance. I did want to just make one clarification, though, too, on the subject of AMI. The AMI is actually only Albany County, Rensselaer County, and Schenectady County. It doesn't include the other two counties, so.
Can I add one more thing, just a phase point about the 75-25?
2 minutes, because I've got two other speakers already ready. 2 minutes. No, you got it. I'm giving you 2 minutes.
Sorry. I thought you said wait. The only thing I want to add with the point about the 75-25 is the rationale for having the housing fund go toward home ownership as opposed to splitting it tenant homeowner grant funding was that back to that idea of supply and demand of if we're creating more mixed income housing and we're increasing the supply of units available, that will therefore help alleviate the rents themselves and therefore help address the tenant side of the equation, whereas the funding, the thing that has been left out of this equation for years has been the home ownership side, and where homeowners, particularly those in our underserved communities, when a furnace goes and it costs tens of thousands of dollars and they make just above the HUD threshold, that's where it's so critical to have that cash available so that we can help the homeowner who needs that new roof or needs the furnace or needs the porch that's falling off their home repaired, so that they're not ignoring it because they can't afford it, and therefore their house then they get cited for a code issue, and then they move out, and then it becomes a vacant and abandoned building, and then we're just continuously perpetuating the issues we see in our historically underserved neighborhoods. We thought the impact was far greater if the grant funding went to the home ownership side, and that the creation of housing addressed the rental side.
So I've got two speakers, 1, 2, but before I go there, I just want to give a point of information. So the reason why it's split 75-25 is one, because this was supposed to be a policy that helped tenants. So the feeling was the majority of it should go to help tenants. And also because it doesn't just have to go towards grants to help tenants get rent assistance. This could also be creative funds to use to give grants to small developers who are looking to develop 2 to 4 units that the report said we have 4,100 vacant buildings, that because there's no funding to be able to bridge the gap in those investments, we're not seeing it. So it could be an opportunity to help fund some of those potential initiatives, as well as have those units then come on as inclusionary pricing. So there's opportunity to be creative with those resources. But with that said, one, and then Megan.
Yes, I just have 2 points. I think one of the things Councilman Clark said, I think everyone's trying to hear we're looking for like a compromise, and we've heard 70% AMI, we're looking at 80%. So from us, this is our business. We do it every day. We know the numbers. I think the audits come out and kind of reiterated everything that we're saying. We stopped development because we can't make the numbers work, but we're developing in Troy and Colony and Guildland. So I think all we've been saying all along is, if you're going to say, hey, we want 70% AMI or 80% AMI, what we're asking is, just show us how to make it work, because we can't figure it out. So if you want us to do 70% AMI or 80% AMI, show us the data. If you could get us a pro forma that shows how we could, generate a profit to pay our investors, to pay the banks, to run the property, I don't think we're necessarily opposed to that. But so far, I've talked to a few council members regularly about this, and I'd say, if we're going to use 70%, if that's the number that you keep saying, show us how to make that number work, because we can't figure it out. Right? It's numbers. So I know we're just, we don't like 100, we don't like 80, we want to do 70. So my question is, are we randomly picking numbers, or, do we, did David propose 100 and you guys propose 60 and you're trying to just negotiate to the middle? In theory, I guess that tries to work, but it still doesn't help the cause of us being able to go build these projects. Right, so I just want to, again, reiterate that just because we're talking about numbers and we're trying to, everyone's trying to come to a compromise, the developers here are saying, we can't figure out how to make that work. So again, if there's other people in the room that are going to put this legislation in place, and you guys have your own analysts or housing advocates who are giving you numbers, or obviously consultants, just pass that data along, because we can't figure out how to do it.
Okay, Councilmember Keegan and then Councilmember Phil.
I want to go back to the ACDA funding scheme. And certainly, Faye, if you would like to chip in, I would love to hear your thoughts. But I cannot, in good conscience, support a bill that restricts how those funds are being used. In my opinion, if we're going to set up a funding stream for ACDA, particularly given the picture that we have coming from HUD and the programs that are being cut and put up in the air, in addition to the fact that when we consider how we got into redlining to begin with, right, and we're looking at our low to moderate income homeowners, and those folks, I think Faye is at 60% AMI is the cutoff for the home ownership programs, grant programs, roughly.
Yeah, well, it depends on the funding stream, so it's either 60 or 80%.
So you have folks that are slightly above that 60, slightly above that 80. They cannot get a HELOC because they don't make enough to get a HELOC. Those are the folks that we're seeing potentially facing foreclosure or having to abandon their homes altogether because they're no longer habitable. So again, nothing precludes ACDA from investing more than 75% of those funds to tenant programs if that is what is actually called for and that is where the need is. But when we as a body to decide to restrict their funding and how it's used in the legislation, they don't have the ability to pivot as needed with all of the chaos that we have going on with HUD right now. I think it's a terrible idea, and I just can't in good conscience support specifying to that extent how those funds are going to be used. I think it should be open, and I don't think it should be dictated by the legislation.
Okay, Councilwoman Phil and then Councilmember Anani.
I just wanted to respond to Mr. Jenko and completely appreciate your point, but a lot that goes into development, in my understanding, is very volatile. So what can be affordable one day, in 6 months, is completely unaffordable depending on what factors you're dealing with, is my understanding. So while the math doesn't math right now, it could math if the tariffs change, if suddenly hiring is a lot easier. There's a million things that can impact what makes development affordable or not affordable. And there are some things that we can work with when we're looking at policy, and there are some things we can't. And so for us, we ultimately have to look at where our constituency is and where we can be in good conscience. So I have to say, for me personally, I have 3 children. They're all now adults, so it's not as if this is a true situation totally. But I would have a household of 4. I could not afford $3,000. That is what 100% AMI would be. I can't in good conscience vote for that. I just can't. I would not think that, again, municipal salary, it's not like I make a ton of money, but I wouldn't think that I should qualify for affordable housing. So if I can't in good conscience afford something, then I can't vote for it. And it's not, I mean, ultimately there has to be a back and forth working with, because if something is not something that you in good conscience can vote for, then that is what it is. And those are the pieces that we kind of have to work with. So I absolutely want to make it so it's affordable for you to build here, but there's some things, like right now, all of the factors that you're dealing with, I wouldn't want to deal with them. I can't even imagine trying to make the math work right now when it comes to building. But we need to always think of our constituency and what we can do in good conscience, and there needs to be something between the two of those. And I think it can work, personally.
Okay, so I've got Councilmember, okay, you can respond, yes.
You know, one of the things is when you look at it, you know, I think David and Alfredo said you guys started this in 2020 and then it got passed in 23. You know, you guys basically passed this coming out of COVID, right? We went into COVID, everything that we did was, you know, for development was at a complete standstill. And then, you know, COVID was over, we're ramping up projects that we put on hold for a year. You know, the New Scotland project, we had to stop, right, with you know, with the rules and regulations, we couldn't do stuff. So now COVID comes, a lot of the, you know, the older job market, they retired. So prices for labor started to skyrocket, right? Interest rates started going up. We have a supply chain issue. And now we passed this new inclusionary housing when it's becoming, you know, now, so we have this ramp up of way more challenges coming on. And then the icing on the cake, you know, for us is now this. You know, and I understand the timing didn't always work out, but, you know, one thing that I'm pretty sure of for us going forward is, you know, the volatility. I understand what you're saying. I can't imagine National Grid's going to start lowering their prices. I can't imagine insurance rates are going to start coming down, because in the history of companies, usually prices don't go backwards. They only go forwards. So, you know, insurance is going to probably most likely keep going up. The trash haulers that we use for trash, they keep raising their prices. I can't imagine when tariffs and all of a sudden, you know, unless someone decides to start lowering the minimum wage, I can't imagine that those prices are going to go down. So again, National Grid, so you got utilities, we have insurance, we have labor, we have, you know, everyday landscaping, the snowball, like, so what I think we're pretty sure about is our expenses are going to keep going up every year. And, you know, so the volatility, I think, for us is it's gonna get harder and harder and harder and harder. So I do understand that you gotta make policy because the market's volatile. You know, for us, really, the only thing that could change is probably gonna be interest rates. You know, but even if the tariffs come off, you know, maybe those prices come down a little bit, but they're gonna go up. Like, everything tends to go up.
But I think just generally speaking, and I think you have the right of it. I think, you know, markets move, prices change, interest rates move as well. We've had 2 years of no construction of market rate housing in the city of Albany. You know, so whether we revisit this in 2 years or 5 years on the trends, right now we have a problem. And the question is, what's the solution to meet the moment now? And, you know, I think what's been proposed seems feasible, you know, in the council member's proposal. I think the studies that were done support it. And I think that's the question, how to meet the moment. Nothing precludes this body from revisiting this.
And just to add, I think the audit stated, I just can't remember what page it's on, that the recommendation was that the body should consistently review this because the factors change, as you pointed out, quite rapidly, particularly given the federal administration that we're dealing with right now, but that we should be revisiting this regularly because those factors change.
And just real quick to add to that, I think as the council, I think you also have to decide of, you know, do we want the doctors and the lawyers and the executives and the people that can afford these $2,000 to $3,000 a month apartments to live in the city of Albany? Because when they come to us and, we do polls and, our data, and when we meet with them and say, what amenities do you want? What are you looking for in an apartment complex? Well, we don't want to live in a 700 square foot apartment. We want a 1,000 square foot apartment. We want a fully equipped gym. We would love to have, a meeting area. We want to have huddle rooms to work from home. We want indoor heated parking. All of that costs us money. And if we don't build it here, they're not going to live here, because our surrounding suburbs and cities, that's what we're building there, and they're going to go there. There's only a few products on the market rate, call it luxury side, and they're 100% occupied. There is no room for people that want these, this apartment. The supply and demand, right? We don't have enough supply, and the demand's through the roof. I think you guys have to decide, do we want these people to live in Albany? And if so, what we're telling you is, like, it's going to cost us a certain amount of money, and we need to charge a certain amount of rent and our numbers to make this work. If the answer is we want to target everything to 60 to 80% AMI, that's fine. But the people with the disposable income that are going to be able to, help the shows, the restaurants, put extra money back into the city, they're going to live in, in your surrounding cities, spending their money there. And again, I think a lot of people love the city of Albany. It's walkable. You have the hospitals. But again, I built across from a hospital, and we have a lot of nurses and doctors who live there. If I don't build that, they're not living here. They're going to go to Guildland. They're going to go to, Colony or Troy.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Zama, I have you next on my list.
Okay, thank you. I'll be brief. I just wanted to what Councilmember Farrell said, I understand it. I do. Obviously, as policymakers and lawmakers, we have a lot to balance, but there's a difference. We have to keep in mind what is aspirational and what is realistic, and especially when we're creating policies and laws, we have to consider who it actually directly affects. And if they're telling us that there's not going to be any of these buildings built that the original law even, would impact, I mean, I can't ignore that. So my question is, since I am always kind of the keeper of the time, I'm just wondering if it's been such a, I think, such a great discussion, and I'm wondering what our goal is for the evening.
To be honest, I was hoping to get closer to a compromise somewhere today, if possible, to be honest, because what I don't want to see happen is, something done behind closed doors where people don't feel that they were, one, part of the process, and two, it wasn't transparent. I mean, we heard from a lot of people today who said that they don't want us to move on this until next year. I was hoping we can try to figure out the numbers and try to figure out the details today. But I am also very understanding that we cannot stay here till 1 in the morning because people have families or jobs and so forth. So I'm not going to keep us here until 1 in the morning, and I wouldn't expect you to stay here till 1 in the morning. But I do think it's important if we can just maybe do a quick go-around from, members as well as Maria and the developers of what they would be willing to put on the table to try to find some type of a compromise, because we've already, I think, you've got two options on the table. The option at 70% was not easy to get to, and as you heard, there's a lot of people from the advocacy groups who are not happy with that number, and they're not happy with the potential pie-outs. So it's important that we hear, and maybe we cannot come to a conclusion today, and maybe we cannot come to a conclusion this year. I mean, there's only 3 weeks left. So,
Can I just finish my question?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So, in my mind, we have to deal with, if we're dealing with the two pieces of legislation that are, you know, in our committee, that we either talk about one specifically and sort of yay or nay it, or I don't mean just the committee members. I mean, if you want to get to like a compromise, then it's sort of back to what Ryan Janko said, we can't just randomly put in numbers. I want to know if it works. I want to know if Councilmember Clark, who just offered 80%, right? If that change in your legislation would make it workable for development.
You want to go, man?
So we want to work off our legislation.
I was considering Councilmember Clark's.
So just to be clear, you know, I feel like the committee's also got a split. You know, you've got two sponsors of one legislation, and you have a sponsor of another legislation. So I don't think it'd be fair to try to put an up and down vote on any of them, because I don't think any of them would be able to get the 3 votes.
Agreed. I didn't mean, I'm sorry, that's not what I meant. I just wanted to know specifically with the legislation that we're talking about, if that's even workable, if that's, you know, for the resumption of market rate development in the city.
So I'm going to start with, I'll allow the developers to go. I'm giving you guys each 2 minutes, and then I'm going to go to Councilmember Clark, and then we'll go committee members, and then I'm going to ask Maria, if you don't mind, also chiming in with your perspectives as well. Thank you.
So, you know, I think that you can never say 100% that any one particular solution is going to be the salve, right? Because we've talked about all of the factors that go into the decision-making process. I would say, having run some numbers on a potential project we were looking at, that what Councilmember Clark has proposed, and I don't think the 80% AMI change shifts, you know, that my viewpoint on this, that yes, that would be impactful in helping us to achieve feasibility. Again, there are a lot of extraneous features, but what we know now is the current state, you know, has not worked for anybody, and that's including us. And looking at those numbers in view of a real potential project, yeah, I think it has merit, and I think it's also supported, frankly, by you know, the report that was provided by Capitalize Albany. So I think that's, you know, again, if we need data, well, let's look at data.
Do you want to say anything? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Jeff. I think looking at numbers, you know, I don't think, and you know, we've had this conversation, and we've talked to numerous developers, you know, about 10 or 12 developers that build, you know, that go on Clinton Avenue, that do infill projects, to luxury, to workforce, to low income. I don't think there's any movement from us on the buyout, because we just, you know, in the audit, there's already a gap in funding. So if we were to increase that to 15,000 or 20,000, it's just, we already have to try to figure out how to bridge the gap without any of this. So now we're agreeing to, you know, if I'm going to try to buy something out and I need to go put another $200,000 in, you know, that $200,000 is not coming from a bank. You know, that's privately raised money that we have investors that we have to pay interest on to do that. I think the 80% AMI on some projects are probably feasible. You know, they do a lot more with different credits on, you know, whether it's geothermal or, you know, just the way they build, you know, in certain areas in the city versus what I build, or, you know, just different things. So I think the 80% AMI is feasible. If I'm going to build, you know, high-end market rate apartments for the doctors or nurses or anyone in the, you know, across from St. Peter's, you know, we probably do need the buyout, because I can't make the numbers work even at the 80% AMI. But again, we have product in that neighborhood around the corner that fits the 50 to 80% AMI. So I think the compromise, you know, on our side is we could probably get to the 80% AMI we're gonna need the buyout options to make projects work. And then I think the one thing that we did talk about is moving the buyout up early. I think once we were able to get our permits from the city, I don't think we have an issue paying that money on the front side than waiting, for our CO or, or rentals on the backside. Which would obviously put money faster into, into you guys to disperse it how you want.
Okay, so since I allowed the developers to go first, I'm then gonna ask Maria, if you don't mind giving your perspective before council members move forward.
Wait, oh, sorry.
Okay, Councilman Bernani. Oh, wait, before I go there. Maria, do you have any other comments or any other information you want to share? Do you have anything else you want to share, Maria, before I go to a question? Anything else you want to share? Any other information you want to share? Sure. Okay, thank you. Councilman Bernani has a question.
Maria, just have a quick question. With the new information that was shared, particularly when it comes to the AMI, just being Albany County and Schenectady, are you still opposed to the 80% AMI? Oh, Maria, the housing advocates. Gotcha.
Okay.
Can I just say something real quick?
Sure.
But what we said was, when we did those projects with the old inclusionary housing, there were no tariffs, pre-COVID with a better labor force, and the interest rates were 3% that we were borrowing. We have projects locked in at, I think you, right? I mean, do you have a project under 3%? I have a project at, 3.2% locked in for a long, it's a massive difference. And I know everything's volatile, but if we're trying to fix the problem today, I don't think if we're ever going to see rates again where we were back in, 2015, 2017, 2019. They're cutting and again, everyone keeps reading the news that the Fed's cutting the rates, right? We keep hearing that they keep cutting the rates. They're cutting short-term rates. They're not cutting, that's why the mortgage rates haven't come down. They're not cutting the long-term rates. And for us, we actually go off of a treasury yield, which is going up. So every time they cut rates, our interest rates are actually going the wrong way. So, you're comparing it to when we made 5% work, we were borrowing money at half off. The cost of goods was 30 or 40% less, and we were paying 25% less in labor for a project. Any of those projects that we did then today, they're just, they're not feasible.
I think the other thing is,
but is their AMI higher than ours? Right.
But the other thing to remember is, apples to apples, 5% you know, the audit says 5% worked, but you didn't have to, the developer didn't have to pay extra to get to 5%. We're asking developers today, given all the things we've talked about, all the external factors, labor, interest rates, construction of materials, all that stuff, we're saying, eat all that and pay extra to go back to the
David,
rate
what was,
from before.
back then, what was the AMI?
Well, and back then, the AMI was essentially 70%.
And respectfully, you know, I've heard the word negotiation, but that's, you know, you don't, you know, it's not, I say $5, you say $15, right? That's not market dynamic. It's not a negotiation, it is an analysis of the market and of prices and of what our particular sub-market can bear or not. So to just arbitrarily say, well, that number is not high enough without justification, whereas we're looking at studies, we're looking at pro formas, and we did have these conversations or attempt to 2 years ago to say, kind of look at the objective facts, let's walk through this together. You can, you know, you can question, you know, my facts, but let's make sure that we're meeting fact with fact here. And that's what's being presented. So again, what we're coming from is an analysis of what we believe the projects can bear, and supported by other, you know, third-party, I would say, you know, impartial sources to arrive at a suggestion. And short, again, to the point before, the dynamics may change over time. I hope they do. I do hope that we can start building again. I do hope that we can increase the density of mixed income housing. I do hope that we, by you know, increasing supply, we see a broader spectrum of available housing and investment in the existing housing, reinvestment. We need to start somewhere, and it's not where we are. And I think we need to start at a basis that we agree objectively will get us there.
So I'm gonna just chime in, and I should have said this from the get-go. When people are going around saying what their points are, the goal is not to have back and forth at that point. It's just to get everything on the paper so we could actually get things on paper. I also want to just, you know, I feel like Maria's all by herself, so I'm gonna give a little bit of, based on feedback from many of the other side on this issue and the advocates is, you know, there is an investment made by the city residents in these developments as well. And that investment with the tax abatements, which we have all agreed are a necessity and something that we all agree needs to stay on the books and with support, but that investment also needs to be understood that it is, there is buy-in from our residents as part of these development opportunities. So that is the strong perspective that I've heard over the last few years, and I heard it very strongly over the last week and a half, because there are a lot of people on the other side who do not who feel, and you've heard some of them today, that any compromise on this right now is wrong. Again, I appreciate everybody being at the table to have these conversations, because that's the only way we move anything forward. With that said, I'm gonna again ask council members to go, committee members to go, starting with Council Member Hyde.
So, working off of my legislation, the changes that I would be comfortable with would be 80% of the area median household income instead of 100%. The buyouts, although I'd like to see them stay the same, there is a slide at the mayor's office provided that said the payment in lieu of $10,000 per unit is financially feasible. So, you know, I'm not sure that we need to say, have a difference of the 5,000 to get to 5% and then 10,000 if you go below 5%. I think just a buyout of $10,000 per unit, regardless of the reduction. And then on the payments, I would agree with Councilmember Keegan that we shouldn't direct how the money is spent. I think we should have it go to Albany Community Development Agency and then have it determine the best way to spend that money, whether it's for tenants or home ownership programs. Not to add a new wrinkle, I also think, you know, if the new council wanted to review this in, 2 years, that there could be a sunset provision, which would then also avoid what we did here, where we're at 2 years and we're doing it at the end of the term. You build something in that allows the next council to look at the market and look to see if these changes help move the needle. So I would like to introduce that new piece. Thank you.
Okay. Any other committee members want to share what they would feel is a fair compromise? Okay. So I'll go with a couple of mine ideas. So some things I'd like to see in it for me is the enforcement piece. I think that's critical. I think for me that is something that we've talked about. It doesn't do any harm to developers. It doesn't do any harm to the financial part, but it does ensure that whatever we do actually goes and benefits those populations that we're hoping to benefit. The second piece, I'm with Maria. I really do believe we've got to have at least 5% set aside. The reason for that is that the whole purpose of this is not just to build funding, but was also to create some type of diversity in housing, and also ease some of the fear of gentrification that our residents have and a sense of being pushed out. So keeping that is critical for me as well. I am open, and I'm open to see what Maria says with her group to move the AMI up to 80%, if that gets us a deal, if that's what's needed to get us to the finish line. I'm open to that, but I do also think that the payouts have to be more than 10,000. If 25 is too much, I get that, but let's find a number that works, because in my opinion, the goal is to one, have additional affordable housing, but two, also have a mechanism to have resources to be able to create affordable housing through other means, which I'm going to say the 75% and 25%. I'm not against it. I respect my colleagues' concerns about that, but I think there's enough need out there in our rental community and enough creativity of how we can use those funds to invest in rental units that can actually address some of the vacancies that we have, that I think that 75% would go pretty fast. And I think the 25% would be additional funds to what's already there, which is needed. Look, I tell everybody, I am not a chain. I bought my first house using a affordable housing grant to buy my home. So I am not against those grants, and that purchase has allowed me to leverage and leverage and leverage to a lot more than I would have thought I had 20 years ago. So I think home ownership is important, and I want to encourage that. But I also want to be fair to how this legislation is rolled. With that, I'm going to stop and allow Councilmember Phil to go.
I just wanted to offer, when it came to the ACDA funding, I think I appreciated Councilmember Keegan's point. And I think maybe a nuance that we could consider is having, not an elaborate report, Faye, don't worry, but maybe just at the end of every year or whenever it makes the most sense for them to actually get a report on on the funds, how much they got, where the funds went to, because I think then the council could make a choice. If the funds were all going to something that had nothing to do with tenants, then I think that it's something that we do need to do legislation to address. But it's my guess, just based on my experience with the neighborhood services and the ACDA, a lot of it will likely go to tenants without us even directing it that way. So maybe if we had a report that was built in, which I think would be helpful to get that data anyway, we could then just gather the information, and if it's not going in a way that that council wants it to go to, we could then do legislation on it.
Okay, so it's been a long night, and I don't want to keep members here longer than we have to. I think I'm listening to what everybody has put on the floor, on the table, and I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done on this to try to get closer to some type of compromise. So with that said, I'm going to take a straw poll from committee members. Committee members ready to call it a night? No? Okay. Then committee members are ready to keep going, then let's keep going, if that's what we're going to do. So, okay. Here we are. So, so we are closer on one team. We're pretty close on the 80% AMI section. Let's deal with the second session.
Sorry, can I interrupt for a second?
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Sure.
I missed the last question that you gave to the committee.
Oh, I asked the committee if they wanted to call it a day.
So and you guys, my colleagues on the committee said no, that we're going to continue? No, I know. I'm looking at my committee members.
Look, it's a lot.
I mean, it gets to a little bit of a point of no return when everybody's like tired and has been sitting for hours. It seems to be maybe it becomes less productive.
Councilmember Howie.
Yeah, and, I'm here listening. There's a lot of stuff. I got to get it off my chest, sorry. Prices are going to go up, developers, because we printed, what, $5 trillion during COVID? The American Rescue Plan, there was all these American plans where we printed money. So that's why we have inflation, because we had nothing backing up that money. So that's the one thing. The other question I got, and I'm really confused about, so the idea is to create more market housing so we can lower the prices of rent. But if you're investing money and you have your rent set at a certain rate, now all of a sudden you're not getting the tenants. Doesn't that put your business in jeopardy? And even further, I thought we were in a capitalist society where, government doesn't interfere, laissez-faire. We're doling out money and we're creating legislation helping developers. I just have a lot of problems. But with all that being said, I'm definitely for the compromising. I like the idea of sunsetting any kind of legislation that we come up with. I think that's a good idea. And 2 years is good because that's where we're at, 2 years since we passed this legislation. And to see what would happen in 2 years, that gives us a chance to look at things. So I'm all for, compromising. And to be, in all due respect, we have 2 developers here, and how many developers there are in the state, in our city, in the country. I understand where you're coming from, but there's just a lot going on. So, sorry, I had to sit here. I kept my mouth shut all night, but I'm talking now. Thank you.
Okay, that's okay. Thank you, Councilmember Howie. Okay. So, we've got a, I want to honor Councilmember's same as statement about going on and on and on and not getting to a finish line. Plus it is after 9 o'clock at this point. You know, so I want to honor that statement. So I'm going to put it out there again to committee members, members of staff, and everybody's here. Do we all think that we've hit a wall, or do we want to still keep drilling down? And if you think we've hit a wall, raise your hand. Okay.
I think you know how I feel.
I know how you feel. Okay. So I'm gonna give us another half hour, and see if we can make some progress in that half hour. And Councilmember Hyde.
No, I was just going to say, not necessarily a wall, but, you know, we're 2-2, and I'm not entirely sure, you know, where we stand on the proposals. I don't know if you want to go kind of point by point and vote on it, or I'm willing to put forward what my amendment would be and to see if I have enough votes to get it out of committee.
Can I say that? Okay, so we have a suggestion going point by point, but before we address that, I'm gonna let the developer say something.
I mean, I think for me, Jeff, and other developers, you know, we've talked about this. You know, this isn't our vote. Like, we're not the ones voting on this. You know, it's, if you guys pass something and we could build a project, we will. If you pass something where we can't make our numbers work, we won't build there, right? It's, you know, we build in the suburbs literally right around the city of Albany because it's feasible for us to do so. So, you know, we're not necessarily swaying, you know, you to go to 70 or 80, like, you know, we look in, and we build not just here, you know, we build in other parts of the state, and other states we're looking at. It's, you know, we live here, so we want to build here, we have businesses here. But at the end of the day, like, this is your vote. And if you pass something that works for us, we'll come back to building in the city of Albany. If you pass something that doesn't work for developers, they won't build in the city of Albany. Just, you know, keep that in mind on this vote, you know, because we're giving you the numbers and the facts that enable us to build.
And to Councilmember Hoey's point, there are probably lots of developers around New York State. They've chosen not to come here. They've chosen not to invest in our city. You know, there's a small cohort of us who are interested in investing in this city because we care about this city and we see its potential, but we can't do it at a loss. And for that reason, respectfully, I mean, I think you raise incredibly valid points, but that's kind of the crux of the problem.
Okay, thank you. And so just to respond to Councilmember Hyde's opinion on going line by line, my only concern is there's some things I'm willing to work on and compromise on if I have assurances that other things are going to be held fast. So that's why you know, we can say, okay, 80 AMI, something everyone feels comfortable, but I'm willing to go there if we can get a guarantee that we're going to hold the line on keeping the 5% set aside. So that's where it's hard to go line by line if you know, without looking at the bigger document, because you know, we may agree one area, but that agreement comes with an understanding that something else would remain. So I just wanted to put that statement out there.
So I guess I would just like to ask for a vote on what I've proposed from the committee members to see if we have an agreement, and if we don't, then we can continue to talk about it until...
You're looking for like an informal polling or an official vote? It's fine for me either way. I just want.
I'd say we do an unofficial polling, just because, I mean, I feel like we're split 50-50, so I'm just being honest about that. So, but yes, you've got the floor, Councilmember Hyde.
So again, just to be clear, it'd be an amendment to the legislation that I proposed, where the 100% would be changed to 80%. The pay down would be a flat $10,000 per unit. and the payment section to Albany Community Development Agency would not direct how the funds would be paid, and the legislation would sunset 2 years after its effective date.
Sorry, when you say a flat, that means that to go back to 5% and also to opt out would be 10%?
Yeah, so instead of it being $5,000 per unit to get to 5% and then $10,000 to get to 0%, it would be any inclusionary unit that's bought out would be $10,000 regardless of if it was to 5% or to 0%.
Can I make a suggestion to help the people on the other side of this? If you, and it's not us, but if, in theory, if you gave developers an option for $10,000, right, and maybe I'm hearing it wrong, for $10,000 you could either go back to the 5% or go to the 0%? Is that what you're saying?
It's per unit though. It's not
Total unit or just the inclusionary unit?
Each inclusionary unit that's bought out would cost $10,000.
Right, so if we're doing a project for 100 units and it's 13%, so we're talking about 13 units, right? So 13 units, so it's 130,000.
Correct.
If we pay 10,000, does that get us to 0 or does that get us to 5% or do we have the option?
It's whatever number of units are bought out. So if you had to have 13 units, it would be 130,000 to go to 0.
To go to 0. So
Instead of 5,000, as it's currently drafted, it would be
I think
13 to 5 would only be $5,000 per unit. It increases the buyout.
But I think to Ryan's question, if a developer wanted to go just to 5%, they would pay 8 times 10, so therefore 80,000.
Correct. No, I'm changing it to 10,000.
If it was changed to 10, yeah.
Oh, so if we just wanted to go to the 5%.
So you'd pay you would pay 80,000. In that hypothetical, you would pay 80,000 to go to 5%. You'd pay 130,000 to go to 0.
Instead of 40,000 to go to 5. That's my
proposal. I've got concerns with that again because it doesn't keep the 5%, but can we do a quick straw vote on who supports that in committee members? Okay. And straw vote, who doesn't support that? Okay. So we're split.
Councilmember Adams had to leave. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, just.
I know. So, yeah, I know, that's where we are. And the sad part is, that's part of how our city is. Okay, I'm sorry, you want to say something else, Councilman Hyde?
No, I appreciate having the chance to see the books. Thank you.
Not a problem. Maria, I'm going to reach out to you. I'm reaching out for a lifeline. What are your thoughts about going 50-50 on the funds? I know there's some hesitation about on the funds that are generated. So 50 for rentals, 50 for home ownership. Okay. I mean,
just really quick what do you see the most need, particularly when it comes to that section as relates to the payout? Do you see more tenants coming that need help, or do you see more homeowners that's looking for down payment assistance? And don't we have a down payment home assistance program? And how's that going, by the way?
Well, so we do have a down payment assistance program funded with our HUD funding. A large majority of those funds have been cut in the federal budget this year. So, but it's hard to really say. I mean, we tend to send folks who need the rental assistance to our subrecipients. We don't actually assist those folks. But we do have a landlord rehabilitation program where we help landlords rehab their properties with the agreement that they do rent to folks who are at 60% of the AMI. Those funds have been zeroed out as well. So there's a, you know, we could probably use the funding for something like that if that's what you guys want. I mean, we're happy to, before we spend $1 of those funds, we're happy to come back to you and talk to you about what we think they would be best used for. My one concern is the enforcement part, Alfredo, that you mentioned. Are you expecting that our department would be doing that enforcement and checking the income of all of the tenants in those properties?
No, I would assume the developers would do that. I mean, that's, let me not say developers, the property management, because I know there's developers in property management.
Yeah.
I would assume the property management would do that because that's part of most screenings is you get income verification, credit scores and all that. So they would have that documentation.
Right, right. So the reason I'm asking you that is because right now we are doing the enforcement of the inclusionary housing to the best that we can based on what the ordinance and the way it reads. But the person who's doing that is our fair housing officer, and we would need some support for that person if you were going to ask us to do that additional enforcement of the ordinance.
And I think we have a lot of questions on the enforcement, because we deal with this all the time. You know, for example, they're in the 5 up, you know, I guess they're in the 5, you know, the 5% in inclusionary, you know, but then like we get asked the question all the time, like, well, what happens if they get a raise, or what happens if there's, you know, significant other moves in? Do we kick them out? Do we let them ride? Do we, because it happens to us all the time.
You can't kick them out.
Right,
no,
so
right,
what do
you
we
can't.
do, right, well, on the enforcement is, you know, if the number is AMI, you know, they're only supposed to pay, you know, they have to make under, whatever the number was, 68,000, and they make 65, and now they just got a raise, and now they're by themselves and they make 70, well, now they're outside of the inclusionary housing.
Right.
So now what do we do?
Right, well, I think that if we actually changed it so that we were looking at the income, the way typically those programs work is that your next vacant unit would have to then be the one that was your inclusionary housing unit.
So in that example, if they were paying $1,400 a month, let's say for that apartment, and now they're not in the inclusionary housing anymore, but my next unit has to become inclusionary, I guess, are we supposed to raise their rent from $1,400 to $2,200, and then and we're going to kick them out anyway?
None of it, we'd have to work all of that
So,
out.
like,
Yeah,
so these are
we'd
some of the
have to,
issues on the
right.
inclusionary that we deal with on the, you know, our property managers come to us, because there's a ton of issues on that side. Like, in that
Right.
example, what do we do?
Right. Right,
Or
and
am I telling them their rent just doubled?
Right, and currently there are no regulations around those.
So keep that in mind when we're dealing with
Right.
this, because it's,
Okay, thank you. Maria, if you don't mind just chiming in a little on some of those topics, specifically the funding. Okay. I like the sunset. I'll say that. Let's look at the 25. I'm at 25,000. Hyde is at 10. So, I mean, here the biggest, for me, I'll be honest with you, the biggest, for me, the biggest drawback is less what it's, and also I want to make clear just for the public. So the 25,000 is what another developer paid to get out of affordable housing in 2022. So just I want to put that out there.
on
That-
what project?
the project on Washington Avenue. So they paid $300,000 for 12 units to get out of the 12-unit affordable housing. And I know,
Was that student housing?
yeah, I know it was student housing, and I know that. So,
Not exactly apples to apples.
so I just want to let people know where part of where those numbers came from. You know, so for me, keeping the 5% is more important than sticking at 25. So I got flexibility if we can find a number that works for people, but with keeping the 5%, because that's really to the core of what the program is supposed to do. The core is supposed to give a small sliver of opportunity for, and now we're looking at, if we raise it to 80%, we're talking about people who make $65,000. We're talking about raising it so that it's 80%. I think I'd have to look at it, but I think it's like $1,800. I don't know. So it's not even at the same affordable rate that it's originally supposed to be. Give me a second, I'm gonna pull that up right now. At 80%, it's $1,626 a unit for one person, $1,858, and for two people, and $2,000 for three. For four, it's $2,300. I just wanna make sure people understand what the numbers that we're talking about by raising it to 80 from 70. At 70, it was $1,400 for one, 16 for two, and 18 for three. So I'm sharing those numbers because when we talk about 80 or 70, it's a real impact on those individuals that we're trying to actually provide some type of opening into these units. So so it's not, it doesn't come with a lot of, doesn't come without pain on this side of the aisle. Councilmember Phil.
I just wanted to perhaps say, just because it is late and I don't love keeping our staff here this late personally. And I also wanted to point out that I don't know that you would be able to pass anything through committee tonight. And even if you did, whatever you pass through the committee may or may not pass through the council. So I think there are broader conversations that probably should happen regardless. But to your point, Alfredo, in terms of transparency, I think maybe if we listed all of the different options that we've been talking about, and then maybe it's something we can discuss, and we can thank the very kind people that have come to talk about this in a broader thing, because we appreciate that. But just to maybe offer that, because I don't know that we'll end up with a solution tonight. But I do think that we have the potential for it, and I think it could be important to say that, you know, we have moving the AMI to 80%, changing the cost per unit, that is up in the air. Yep, so.
And the sunset?
10,000 to 25,000, but probably less than 25,000 because it would be a compromise. Having the 5% be there no matter what. Sunset of 2 years. An enforcement provision. And that's another reason why I think that we might not be able to come up with a solution tonight, because I do agree enforcement is an important thing. If you don't have enforcement with laws, then, but making sure that we have some sort of enforcement that makes sense would be good. Was there, oh, and the discussion on exactly where the funds would go, if it should be dictated or not, and then what that looks like. And I'm going to add, just in addition to that, because I think it's a good idea, regardless of that conversation, of some sort of reporting on the funds every year coming, publicly shared and coming to the council.
So I want to be fair, I think those are some of my lines that I'm looking at, and I want to make sure we get Councilmember Clark's as well. I think his is, let me correct me if I'm wrong, $10,000 per unit to go to either 5 or 0, 80% AMI, no direction with the funding, and a sunset in 2 years. Is that correct? Okay, so that's what I've got as well. Yeah, so that's, look, those are different ideas. I think we've come somewhat closer on some of them. I think we're far away on others. Councilmember Clark.
No, it just also sounded like developers may be willing to make the payment earlier than 2 years. I don't know if Councilmember Farrell put that on the list, but the timing of the payment.
Yeah, mine, I liked mine, and I got it from a developer they wanted upfronted. So, you know, I think we had it within 90 days of getting the OLP. So, you know, and I think they've said that they can do it sooner than that, but at least that gives them the time to get that in there.
What is it? What do we want, or what do you guys want? I mean, so if you get it, if we're gonna give it to you before the ROP, you're waiting for us to finish the entire project before you get the money.
No. Oh, sorry.
So
it's not before the ROP, it's before the permit.
Before the permits or ROPs? Because the
So
ROPs for us come after the project's complete.
I think the way we voted, we gave you leeway that you can pay it anytime up until 90 days from when you got the ROP. So the CO, yes, the CO. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, the CO. Thank you. It is late. The CO, which would give you, you could do it when you got your permits, you can do it when you're in the middle of a building, you can do it whenever you want, but it gave you some flexibility. The deadline was, on our amendment, was 90 days from when you got your
I think the compromise from us was, rather than you guys wait 2 years for us to finish a project and then get the CO, most of us would probably be willing to give it to you up front, to give to them to start putting to good use.
Okay.
And I mean, I would imagine they would want it sooner than later.
Okay.
Right. And just to that point, you know, again, reflecting on the last 2 years, a $10,000 per unit buyout on a project that never happens because it's not feasible is $0 into that housing fund.
So, just recap, you guys are okay with doing it upfront early? Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna give you one. Make us pay it up front.
Upfront. Okay. Any other points or information that anyone would like to share? Okay, it's 9:26. With nothing else on the docket, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourn.
Do I have a second? Second from Kai. All in favor?
We second?
Aye.
Aye.
Can I second?
Thank you, everybody. I mean it. Thank you,
job?
everyone, for your perspective and your willingness to stay.
Yeah, I mean, now you're stealing my stuff.